Hello.
Is being recorded.
Hi, and welcome. This is Judge DW. It's December 25th, 16. Those who believe in Christmas, Merry Christmas. Those who believe in just a happy holiday thing, happy holidays, season greetings. I'd like to present to you the Matrexit Discussion Group with your host, Bryan Parker. We do have a special guest on tonight. Before we go there, I'm just going to run through real quick here a disclaimer, just to let you guys know that this group information is strictly information, educational, and fact-finding only. This is not legal or lawful advice. Please seek a competent attorney for those who are watching us closely, if you know what I mean. But with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Bryan Parker. I yield.
I just want to say happy holiday to everybody. Thank you for being here. I know this is probably the most celebrated holiday, at least in America. And this, is not something, if you do any research, this isn't a holiday that's gone on for hundreds or thousands of years or anything like that. And, in the timeline of man, this is actually something that's relatively new, but everybody thinks it's always been a mainstay, and it has not. And, I speak against the corporate structure and the things that they've done to indoctrinate everybody's minds and hearts and lives, and to keep everybody to be good little wards of the state. And so we decided to continue on with this call this evening. I'm not going to change my principles according to what the world's doing. We are supposed to be set out. We are supposed to be a particular people, or a peculiar people, rather. And, peculiar has been taught to us that it's something weird. Well, it's not. It's something set apart. And it's as simple as that. I mean, it's not a difficult situation to really comprehend who you are, where you're from, and what is really happening. And, one of the first people that I came across in researching things was the name of Keihn. And she's discovered some just unbelievable info over the years that she shared with me. I mean, I've gotten on the phone with her, and it can be easily a 3 or 4 hour call. And we won't even scratch the surface of issues. And so, with this being everybody's little holiday time, we're going to continue on with the idea of family and discussing family and things that this corporate construct has done to try and tear apart families. And it's not just a matter of custody, but also right down to their homes and how their life is structured. So with that, I'd like to welcome Keihn on. How are you doing tonight, Carol?
I'm great. How are you?
Wonderful. Very, very glad to have you here. There's somebody I've always planned on bringing on. Yeah, absolutely. So you're somebody I've always planned on bringing on, but I just want to make sure that we got rolling good before I start bringing certain people onto our call. And you've always been right up at the top of my list of favorite researchers. So, yeah.
Well, thank you. And that's what I like to do. I like to pick apart their documents and their briefs because they're just loaded with tricks. And I don't do it to perpetrate or perpetuate this continuing criminal enterprise, folks. I do it sometimes because there are children still, or offspring, or a little man and little woman are stuck in this system. So people, we got to go in and get them back out. They're stuck in there. They're enslaved. We got to make this thing right. And that's why I do it. So I want to know the truth of it, and I'm not afraid of it. And I used to apologize for a lot of things and try to be all politically correct, and I do still sometimes because I know some things that would be controversial with some. But everything that has happened to me, it was like it was like I was led, and I've always been a little bit odd. What you were talking about earlier, I've been different than most. I was a child who said, my brothers and sisters, my little brothers and sisters, say, "What are we going to do?" And I said, "Let's go upstairs and get the bathroom mirror and take it out of the vanity and pretend like we're walking on the clouds. You want to?" And it gives you a different perspective, and that's what I did for kicks. I thought it was great, but I like going up steps. I'd be like, "Here, I'm going on this. I'm walking on the clouds."
You know, one of the things you talked to me early on about, and I don't know if it was on one of your calls with Two Moms and a Bro or not, but it was regarding your grandson, and you shared a video with me today of something that was happening at school with him. And I think that was one of the early things maybe that where you were really starting to get your teeth into what was going on. We've been studying the bonds that are running in the background where they're making millions and millions of dollars from the American people. And you want to touch on that a little bit for me and what happened with those?
Well, I'll touch on what happened, but the bonds I've just learned about. David Roach, I hope he comes on. He knows about those, and remember I was telling you, Brian, that a lot of people say this is how you got to do this, you got to do that, and the only reason that I went into that court was because I didn't know any better. I had no idea it was like this. I got a rude awakening, see. So what they do is they do hit the family up. You're right. You're talking about family. They hit the family up. And what they do is when somebody buys a house or a car locally, they have this guy called a foreclosure agent's one of them. He buys property for the judges and the pension funds, and he's the holder. But really, those people own it, and they just don't want anybody to know because for every note that you get, if you're not an insider in this deal, for every note that you make or you think that you make, and it's misassigned, by the way, but for every note, there are 9 riders in the mortgage that nobody marked the box NA or marked it out. So all 9 riders state on the top, do not record attached to note. And they're housed within all the circuit courts that are currently running this fraud. And it takes it up to the federal district under class actions and things like that. And then it goes up into the Supreme Court into issues such as hostile work environment, Firestone tire, eminent domain, just the different causes. And so derivatives of our court cases are being traded just like us. We're being cut into 10 slices. Cameron was, all your children are. The minute they get their social, they go and take it to, here locally, they took it to the police chief. He was in charge of traffic tickets. And he would write a traffic ticket that had my grandson's first name and the foreclosure agent who was posing as a seller or owner, his last name, changed his age from 4 to 24, used the last 5 of the Social Security number issued to that offspring of mine, used that and create a new identity and start court cases in their name because they had to have people to go with these rider loans on these mortgages because they were running that in the background. They got to create a whole 9 layers. It's like fractionalization at the courthouse, not just in banking and in netting, right at the courthouse.
Wow, unbelievable.
Does that make sense?
Well, they've watched and seen how the fractional reserve lending program works, and so you would think it only makes sense if they would take it to the next level and use it.
Well, they brought it down this level or something because it's down to the lowest level. Those 9 rider loans, though, are evidenced in that shadow docket. And all that stuff is on that YouTube channel, Brian. All those things, I actually scanned it all in and learned how to do that scroll screen. So the actual documents, there's a recording of them all, and I explain. I do kind of cuss sometimes in there a little bit. I try not to.
Well, that spices up your conversation, though.
Yeah, I just don't want to. I really don't want to do it today.
Well, when you start learning the things that are going on, it's very difficult not to be angry. And in fact, it wouldn't be normal as a man or woman not to be angry. In fact, if you weren't angry, there'd be something wrong with you, in my opinion. Anger is
a good motivator. Better to be PISS off than PISS on.
Well, and I think a lot of people get confused. The scripture says, Yeshua says, be angry and sin not. People are like, wait a minute, how can you be angry but not sin? But there's, you get into language, and typically everybody thinks that there's only one definition for a word, but when you go into the Greek and the Hebrew, those words, there might have been 5 or 10 different definitions for the one word that was used. And when he was talking about that, he was talking about a righteous anger, being angry about something that was actually against our Creator and against people.
Yeah, the psychologists say, and rightfully so, when they're doing like IMEs. I've had them doctor shop on me. They've tried to prove, and this is true. If I came at them like in federal court years ago, I've had court cases where I've been involved in them, and I've had court cases. David helped me with one court case on my son, but we haven't lost yet, except for one time, and that was back in the 80s. So I've had good success in that ballpark of theirs, or whatever it is, the court, the handball court, it seems like they're playing. I've had good success, but that's because I didn't know to be afraid of them. So now that I know what I know, I do not want to go in there at all unless I have to, because I don't know the rules. It's very dangerous.
Right, and in front of other people, they're going to play whatever they can to keep the cat from being let out of the bag. And I touched briefly.
Yeah, so like I don't know about that part. I wish I did. I just know about the fraud part. I know what people should watch out for, and it's common sense. It's backdating in your documents. If you've got any kind of contract or buy a car, anything, you better look to see if that warranty or insurance is not dated the day before, like the start date when they issued it. It'll say issued on. Well, that's when they're starting it, because over there in New Zealand, on this island called New, I think, it is negative 11 hours universal time clock, because I've gotten into all this. And the way I know about all this is because I was a calibration expert at Colgate-Palmolive, and I was an SAP expert, or I was considered and certified as an SAP expert at Colgate-Palmolive, which is just basically like a software program that joined like Colgate-Palmolive with all the satellite plants, and it was in real time when I was working with it, and I would train people on it, and it did all the inventory, so I could track inventory, and I was very good at finding patterns that were, if the pattern was off at all, I could tell, and I could find discrepancies. Like, I don't know, about $1 million worth of product was missing there at Colgate-Palmolive. Come to find out, the bosses were selling it out the back door as bad product. And they were telling corporate it was women like me making $23 an hour, which is good money for around here, had never been a bad worker. And to find out it was in my name, I'm like, you got about 45 days to get this out of my name, and I'm not playing. And I wasn't playing, and I didn't lose. It took 8 years, and I worked under a federal attorney. He taught me a whole lot, and now that I know what I know, I'm like, oh, my word. No wonder he said the name Miss or Mrs. is so important. No wonder he asked me how I knew about the stare decisis and the brackets and the parentheses. I didn't know. I just told him, well, those are Trump. But that's not what he was talking about. He was talking about the way they get in and out of the documents. Those parentheses and brackets are entry and exit points. They're a real shallow rabbit hole. People think it's real daunting, but it's just a clause, and they enter in through one, and they get paid out through the other. On the flip side, like in a labor case, like a hostile work environment, or like the EPA guy who's been viewing porn, well, he's getting paid to count how many click and pays somebody clicks on Pizzagate. So that's what's going on there. They're getting paid for the negative fake news that the press is pushing. They're getting paid for it, so they win either way. And we're going to pay because our IPs are tied up in it.
Well, yeah, and that's one of the things that's being discovered also and being shown by people like Ken Doss is all the IP fraud.
Uh-huh.
And that's
exactly.
The stuff that people absolutely don't see.
Well, they don't see those 9 rider loans, so they just can't see how this could possibly be possible, that somebody could allow this. Well, it's the administrative side of things, and it's the trust side of things as well. And they're not doing them properly, because whenever somebody goes to buy something, it's much like the private side people are trying to get to where they can operate in that respect and do the UCCs and things like that. But these folks take you into an LLC without your knowledge. You think you're purchasing a house, but you're going in as a member of a private LLC where the members aren't named. And in there, they might take a young lady like my daughter who bought a house and was single, had 2 children, worked at the Indiana State Hospital, made good money, had good credit, and they took her in and they made her as if she were married to 2 and 3 different men because there was 3 properties involved. So right away, she thought she was buying a house, but because the insurance policy was backdated to 2006, that property she purchased, or thought she did, was actually, there was a foreclosure that happened in 2006. It wasn't being disclosed on the record. It was exempt from public disclosure under a Public Rule 102. It's in one of the videos. So I can't recall it now, 104 maybe, but 29. And I don't want to say for sure. It's in there. But anyway, public law, it allows them to not do the disclosure on the property. So she thought the guy who said that they said he's a seller, he's the owner, she thought he owned it. Well, he didn't. An old couple, it got foreclosed upon. Of course, the bank never put it in their name. They kept it in the people who left. And I've talked to those people since I've actually talked to those people, and they're like, do what? All the people on all 3 houses. So Rachel's got this backdated title policy to 2006. They made her assume their loan, the prior loan that had been drawn up into bankruptcy. It's all there in that shadow docket, and a deputy sheriff is the one who helped me. She said, go up at the courthouse, and because she found out what was going on with my grandson, she said, go up to that courthouse and get this docket. And I thought I was going to get a tiny docket, like a 3-month foreclosure is what it was showing on the record, and that would be tiny. Well, it was a foot high. And the lady says, oh, I'm sorry. And it was real casual back then. She's like, I'm sorry, this is a lawyer's file. I'm like, that's okay. I had my friend with me. I'm like, stop it, hurry up. I got to go get some more money. And I went across the street, came back. I spent like $300. And anyway, I got out of there. And then one of my old law professors, because I've taken paralegal courses as well. I don't have a certificate, and you don't need one. But anyway, he got on Facebook and said, what's going on? The feds just raided the courthouse. And then he must have been drinking because shortly later he got off, but not before a guy who worked for Goldman Sachs started following me on my family. And this is before I knew anything, so I didn't have any interesting posts back then, right? So I have the very moment that this happened because that guy was on me, so I knew that he knew. And I went back up at the courthouse a couple of days later, and the girl said, you'll not get back in our room. And I said, what are you doing? She said, you know, you got the judge's notes. I said, well, I thought it was a clerk's notes. Thank you very much. I didn't know it was a judge's notes. Because they were just doing everything on paper there. So they'd say, Rachel bought 422 Randolph Street, and that property, Annette and Charles Scott owned that property. They moved to Atlanta, and they took them for a ride too. But 422 Randolph Street, lot 154, in that foreclosure, it showed another action against a Charles Scott. And it showed that property was Irish Court, and it was lot 4. So I got 154, lot 4. Well, then I also got an anchor date search tied to this property of Rachel's, which is the undisclosed land contract. Not only was there an undisclosed sale of a foreclosure, a sheriff's deed, there was an undisclosed land contract, and that's in the anchor date search in my videos. If anyone wants to go look, I explain it thoroughly in there. But they are doing anchor dates, and they're tying these properties together behind the scenes on these 9 rider loans that you're not supposed to know about. So they're doing secret transactions to make that look good on their paper, and they've got to have a way to track it. And what I did was found out how I was able to track it with the help of some old ladies who were grandmothers like me. They're like, I know what's going on. And they helped me.
Yeah, you actually found that they were going and taking properties and actually splitting them up. They were chopping them up, weren't they?
Oh, yes, here in town, and a lot of people don't realize this, but everybody they were doing this with, it was part of, under Obama, it was part of a federal regulation shifting under the public housing that was going to occur, and they knew it because they're betting on the future, and they're actually creating the future so that it creates an order that will take them back in time with that order, with those erroneous off dates and misspelled names. They know what they're doing. Everybody thinks, oh, I'm looking at my case, that was a mistake, that was a mistake. Oh, this couldn't. I've seen hundreds of cases. It is no mistake, and I'm not I'm giving legal advice, but I'm telling you, I can show somebody, but I'd rather not just look. I just take my word. It is not a mistake, and if it's not a mistake, they can't make that. They cannot create an error so they can later go in and correct it.
Right, absolutely.
It has to be a mistake. If you can prove the intent and you can prove a fact pattern, you got what they don't got on Hillary because they keep saying it's about intent. Well, if you can prove intent with their evidence, it's over for them. They need to correct the system. They do, and they're trying to correct it, but not right, because they could give everybody a 50-50 shake. I mean, everybody, there's enough to go around, but they don't want to open up those brackets and parentheses. And I'm going to give this because I've already said it several times until somebody listens. And people do listen, but somebody actually does something. This is a gift. Here's the cure. Why don't you add the search logic or the language into the search machine that allows searches within the signals, the parentheses and the brackets? Because you guys go in, and I'm talking to the government and these people now, this system administrators, You government, that's where you go in to harvest the CAFRs and all the funds. So don't tell me you can't fix this.
You know what? I want you to share everybody your YouTube channel as well. I think you've mentioned the videos and stuff. I want people to go check them out when they have a chance.
It's under Carol. I thought I sent it to you in that. Maybe I didn't. It's CAROL and then KEIHN, and then it's a public official and judicial corruption. And there's a bunch of stuff on there. Some of it's a little far out. I don't put all my real far out stuff on there because I don't want to scare everybody off. They'll be like, what is wrong with this woman? She's checking out Charlie Maddox Manson because he was never born Charlie Manson. He so wasn't lying, and everybody's scared to death of him. And I've seen his birth certificate. He was born Maddox.
Yeah, I've researched the topic on him too, and to me it was just mind blowing. It was, definitely one of the big cases that was used to kind of warp everybody's minds and to build fear in everybody's minds. And
on my Facebook page, if anybody wants to go look, I got a picture of Roman Polanski is. Dressed in drag. Did I send that to you, Brian? He's dressed in drag as the homely chick that killed Sharon Tate, by the way. I wonder if Roman was doing a film back then, do you think? I also have some pictures of I have some pictures of all of the Manson family jam people or the murderers, because Charlie was a serial killer. That's about the time Rice Krispies were becoming very popular. So they said he was a serial killer. He goes, I wasn't there. He said, don't you folks understand? Until I get my day in court, none of you is going to get your day in court.
Yeah, and nobody's gotten their day in court since.
Well, Nixon called him guilty, so it was very symbolic, that kind of crap they were playing. And old Elvis getting some kind of a DEA badge, that's a rock and roll industry entry point if I ever saw one.
Well, even, I guess we're getting off topic a little bit, but even the living conditions that Charles Manson has in prison is unbelievable.
But we're really not getting off topic. See, this is why I'm looking into it, because I stemmed it all from these documents. These parentheses and brackets and the quotations originated in all the homeowners' multi-state notes, and mortgages under what's known as a compensation clause. And it runs through the Nice Convention, and I want to say out to India, but I could be wrong on that country. But it runs through your state excise departments under something called TAN. It takes you to a tax account number over in India where they are able to be paid in $10,000 increments via cards, and it could just be government issued purchase cards with the VA were most recently used. And it's weird because when I talk about it, and sometimes when I'm talking on the phone on purpose, I'm not on a radio broadcast or anything, but when I'm talking to my friends privately, I will put something out, and my friends know when I'm doing it, I'll put something out there that may not be completely true just to see if they buy, and they do. They do. So I know then that certainly that they're probably, I don't care. So they can't, what is that called, plausible deniability? They can't claim,
Yeah.
oh, we didn't know that. That can never happen here. They told me what I had was fraud. There was a fraudster that sold my daughter a house, and he never got convicted because he works for the Attorney General and Mears and the courts, and he works with the judge and the owners of my daughter's house, this Charles and Annette Scott. They kept mentioning this Charles Scott. Well, they messed up, the clerk did, because she was doing the paperwork in one day in 2008 and trying to go back to 2003 in this backward spiral on this judgment docket entry that's not listed in the public. It's in the shadow docket file, though. So all of that's being shown there, and what they'll do is say, we tried to serve so-and-so at this address, and it'll be in parentheses, and at this address. And nowhere in the heading is the property address listed. And it's under Mirrors, by the way, and not only that, it actually has MBRS spelled in addition to Mirrors on these particular papers from the shadow docket.
Unreal.
So you go in to buy in one house, it turns into three. I call that a magic hat trick. It's kind of like a Fibonacci, the very first of the Fibonacci. No, it's not. Wait a minute. 1 plus 1 equals 2. It's a sequence. Daggone it, wait a minute, because it starts with 1. Oh, one property turns into 3, so I'm messing up. It's a magic hat trick in accounting. So that sequence somehow makes it turn into 3, and it's like a triangle almost, how this starts. But then it goes into a square of properties. It's like a magic square trick. So you got a triangle over here with 3 properties as the point, but they are going to make that triangle go into this square of 4 properties and turn that transaction into almost a commercial transaction, but it goes over the commercial transaction when they put 3 properties into the commercial property that's tied in, because this is the pattern on how they do them all. They'll do a commercial property on a major highway, like a U.S. Highway 35, and it'll be a condominium or something like that. Well, in the mortgage, that'll show the pathway from these 3 properties, and one of those mortgages, it'll take you to that commercial property. That's usually a split with the state, wherever it's in. It'll be the subject of a split. So those lot numbers will be, and this is about a patent too, but those lot numbers will be split in 2. Some of them, like True Freeman's from here in Indiana. Do you know True Freeman?
Yes, I do.
Okay, well, True Freeman was on the phone one of our calls, and he said he was saying, well, they changed up my lots. They split them in 2. They split my property completely in 2. And I said, ew, wouldn't it be something? I said, because all your properties are showing up under Derek Brownlow or Brownlee, some ball player. I said, oh, Cindy Brown, I know her, and I said, we've talked about it. She's a gold medal basketball lady out there in California. And I said, we've talked about it. I said, I think they're bankrupting their gladiators because they did a funding for the 2016, I want to say Secret Service, but I'm not sure. Anyway, they they said it was a gold bill, and it was a double-sided gold bill. They were doing like those kind of keywords. So they're bankrupting these athletes. So this Derek Brownlow, or Brownlee, whatever his name is, he had a retired number because he was a Special Forces football guy, and it was 50. And I said, ew, true. I said, is it 50? He goes, oh, Carol. Yeah, that's the kind of games they're playing. So that brings in the FIFA scandal. Guaranteed that's all involved in this because it's all everybody's being able to see now how it's interconnected. It's all about connectivity, right?
Well, they had multiple properties on Derek, didn't they?
Yeah.
Actually, listed
Thousands.
with his retired number.
And well, yes, and I had to look his number up, but True's, they may have True's property in particular, that lot that his neighbor had bought without him even knowing there was a sale. That lot was number 50. So I didn't know of Derek's, and when I first met True, I couldn't. He said, "You found what I found." Well, it took me a few months to go back, and I thought he found way more than me. And yes, this is it. This is it. This is what they're doing up in Indy anyway. Here they were using the last name, William and Betty Lou Cross. Well, the county attorney and the school system attorney and the title company CEO is named Ron Cross. And this Judge Horn that's the chief judge, they usually use chief judges because they're going to act as an officer instead of an official. And I know this because he did. He said, I wouldn't have, what kind of a judicial officer would I be? Because the second hearing, my daughter choked, and I couldn't stand it, so I was getting up to leave. And he's like, "You sit down." Ma'am, sit down. I said, "I will not." And he said, "You sit down." I said, "I will not. You have no honor in your courtroom, and you're letting fake mortgages run through it." And I left. And then the deputy, I know, right? My husband was like freaking out. Everybody just froze and stood there. So Stanley, Mr. Stover brought me back up. He used to be my boss. He said he wants you to come back up. I said, "Am I free to go?" And he said, he wants you to come back up there, Carol, please. I said, "Are you going to arrest me?" He goes, "I'm going to have to." I said, "I'll go up for you, but I can't stand that dickhead." And so he went back up there, and they made the deputy sheriff stand there. And this is an old vet. And I have great respect for him. He's a good man. And he's standing there, and my husband, myself, Dennis, Alan Fick, Craig, and then Gabriel Hatfield were all in the audience. We were not allowed to leave. So, of course, the judge told me what he thought, and I said, "Oh, forgive me. It's just very hard watching what's occurring here with my offspring, my daughter." And then he said, "Is there any?" He said, "Don't laugh. Do not laugh. Do not laugh." I was like, "I am not laughing. I am not laughing." I was growling at him. I was just showing my teeth like, "You little fat pudgy thing." So he goes, "Is there anything you want to say?" And I'm like, "I have the most overarchingly highest right over anyone to protect my offspring." And he said, "Yes, ma'am," and went on. And he had my daughter pay taxes, which she tried to pay him earlier. The clerk wouldn't take them. And had my daughter pay taxes on a property that was not the one she purchased. And he knew that we knew this. He knew it because he said, I have to act as an officer. It's on the record. And there's 2 mortgages and 2 warranty deeds, so that doesn't help anything. They're on anchor dates 2 years apart. They belong to the houses that are tied together via this undisclosed land contract.
Yeah, it's amazing the different hats they take on and put off.
Well, they're doing this with people in the courts that are going now, and they can't figure out why they can't win in court. I think everybody needs to let them hang themselves and do a fraud upon the court all over the place, and then let them sell the property, and even have give them some misinformation if you think they're tapping you, and be talking to your friends on the phone and say, "Yeah, they think my name's on that, but really I messed that up on purpose, so my name's not really." But the next week you'll get a sheriff's sale, and then they won't know whether to sell it or not, right? Because they can't sell it because it's got that name, Carol, my name on it. They are like, "What do we do now?" Because what if she comes in here? She's gonna have a voice about this thing, and we don't want her talking.
Yeah, that's the last thing they want.
I need them to sell the property though, because that's where you get the money. That's where you get a payoff at, is when they sell the property. That's real. That's some real good damages, which they're selling it anyway, but they're not disclosing. They're not disclosing during discovery when they commit discovery abuse and make you look like you didn't comply or you're in contempt, when I didn't even think about this either, Bryan. I'm sitting there looking and I'm thinking discovery. I'm like, discovery abuse, you're just creating a controversy where none existed, and you're coming in here to create this order to be issued so that you can perpetuate this mill. That's a never-ending mill. And, of course, she just went ahead and did it, and it's all on record. They never have answered the counter that Rachel put in. This is part of the buy, sell by a Metropolitan Life Insurance Company. I learned about that when I worked at Colgate-Palmolive, and there was a lawsuit going on. They came in, and I studied everything thoroughly, and plus I lost money on the stock market under that Metropolitan Life Insurance Company demutualization. November the 19th or 17th of 1999, you'll find a letter, and I can send these to you too, Bryan, in a PDF, but you'll find it on the internet as well. It's a no-fault I think it's a no-fault letter from Metropolitan Life Insurance Company, and it's about 99 pages, and there will be this program called the Buy, Sell Buy program inside of that testimony. And that's a letter from the Securities Exchange Commission, the last name of, I think it's Kimberly Starr. And it's a no-fault letter as long as Metropolitan Life Insurance Company during the demutualization lets them know who their contracts are with. They will not make them file under Regulation X or Z. Then they attach all their testimony, and in their testimony they state, Metropolitan Life Insurance Company states that they are going to do a takings, that's in quotations, takings, by committing the act of conversion. And that so then they testified in April of 2000, the year 2000, April of 2000, before the Mr. Levin of the New York Insurance, he's a New York Insurance Commissioner, or was. He ended up supposedly being on some floor at the 911. And they testified before him, and they tag-teamed the testimony. It was Metropolitan Life Insurance Company's John Ben Moshe was his name. They had McLean Brothers, and they had Goldman Sachs, and it was a Silverstein. So these guys were tag team in the testimony as they were, reciting everything they wanted to get on their record and make it look good, because they were all reading from a script, and the New York Insurance Commissioner was going to let this thing happen. And they came in and they said, we're going to demutualize, we're going to start a common stock company. Well, this one guy got up and he said, one of these guys from these, and it's in the testimony, he said, and I have that, I'll send that to you too, Bryan, you can share it with people. He said, we are going to start a livestock company under Rule 7312. So prior to that, they were taking out New York insurance law. They were citing it, right? But here comes this little fella, and he's like, we're going to start a livestock company under 7312. And then a team of lawyers comes in to make corrections, and they correct the thithers and the these and the thous and the r's and the commas. They leave those two things to stand. So I'm like, okay, these are here right now. It appears to me I got grandchildren, and my daughter's identity has been compromised. That's clear from the files. So it's clear to me what they're doing here.
Yeah, it's unbelievable the things they're doing.
Well, no, it's right there, because then I took those two terms, and you can do it if you want to, put in livestock, one word, don't do any spaces, and then put in cattle code 7312. And it's updated daily in California. It's in a Google book because Google's involved in their contracts. If you take a Google book, this is cool. If you take a Google book with certain keywords, like let's say you're looking for a code you see somewhere, and a Google book entry comes up, open that thing up, and then I want you to put your cursor and spin, and it looks like a computer printout. You know how those cards got those little punch holes in them?
Right.
The computer punch holes, like the old-fashioned info that the government used to hold on us. The whole book's like that. It's a pattern. It's a straight set pattern there, and it's all white pages. It's almost like you can look at a punch card on Google Play, because it's on Google Play.
Huh.
Because they're playing
I've
games
got to
with
check
it.
that out.
And Google also has a contract, and my friend Lynn Honeycutt, never mind. Anyway, there's a lot of stuff going on in the real estate industry, like with the the multi-list search engines, and with the what is the name of the one property? It's not Willow. What's the name of that? I'm having short-term memory loss, Brian. It's not Trulia. It's not Trulia. It's one of the major real estate listing PDFs you can get on properties. It's not Trulia. It's not RedSnap. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, I don't recall the name.
Well, when you look some of these properties up, you'll come up with these sites, and you'll get into one that shows pictures and virtual tools and things.
Right.
Zillow. That's
Zillow. Yep, there you go, Zillow.
Yeah. Zillow has a contract, and inside there, that Google map, when you get into that and you can find your property, right-click on that map of that property as the bird's eye view, like you're looking down on it in real life. Hopefully it'll have one of those, and you right-click on it, and then you copy it into, it'll work on 2007 and prior. Copy that into Word, and you watch that map go apart in 9 pieces. It makes perfect sense with the writer loans I was just talking about, because and one of those pieces always ties to a highway or a state road, and it doesn't belong.
Well, that was the same thing, actually. They did, what was it? So after World War I, when they were running the railroad through Europe, and what they were doing was that they were doing it, and they were purchasing, I think it was property to 1,000 feet on each side of the railroad. So then they were getting all this control of all the properties out there in Europe.
See, I didn't know about that. I just know about what my documents show, right? And it's like really weird discoveries. I'm like, this is like freaky. I'm watching Jesse Ventura, Lost in Time, and I find a website on NTIS, Department of Commerce, where I copy over because I'm so stinking tired. I can't stand it. And I'm like, I'm just going to copy this website. So I copy it, and I'm like, oh, my word, there's hidden text showing up. This is new meaning to transparency. The letters are the same colors as the background. How smart are they? On a government
I've seen
website.
things like that. Yep.
That was my very first ever YouTube.
And the government or the corporation, they've sprouted off their tentacles into all these other corporations, such as, the MetLife Insurance, which originally was Met Bank. Isn't that correct?
Oh, no. Now, Met Bank came after that, after they demutualized, because they had to get the regulators, they were loosening up on the regulations. So they allowed them to become a insurance/mortgage banking syndicate. And they didn't have any control. So MetLife came in and out like a thief in the night. They sure did. And I've got 2 purge loans. And I talked to the girl, and she said, I gave her the loan numbers, and I said, this is showing as the GSA sponsor. And nobody was supposed to know about these loans because I got the crook file. And do you want me to tell about that or not, Brian?
Yeah, go ahead. And most people don't even know who GSA is. I think a lot of people are waking up to it. And even when it gets into...
sorry, government-sponsored entities, I think.
Yeah, government-sponsored entities. And MetLife or Metro, they've even sprouted their tentacles out to dig into every little person, and I use the word person, on purpose, to get all the little info they can get on everybody, and they've got people actually paying them to give them their info and their family's info through Ancestry.com.
Yes, and they testify. I have that clip in my playlist as well. I have the clip with the original. Usually I have the original videos of my source cited, and I got the date I cited it on. So I do try to do professional source citing on my videos. and it'll be in the descriptions. And I almost always, sometimes I might not if I get in a big hurry and I got this big feeling that I got to get it out there for whatever reason. I do that sometimes. I just put stuff out and then I'm thinking, I got to take this away because this dude's got a black mask on. He's talking
and I'll
to...
tell you what. When I read stuff and see docs or whatever, and I see that word "met" in there, it's like my stomach just turns.
Well, it's just a system. They're actually the government themselves. If you look at the Metropolitan Life Insurance Company history, there's a book from 1911, which is 100 years off, right? So seriously, there's a book from 1911 where they're talking about the reserve that's inside their building, and it's an inside community, and they've got the integrated health and everything. So they had the system set up at the origination of the Metropolitan Life Insurance Company back when they moved from their first building to where the clock is, where
right.
the clock tower is. So you can look at that, and it's very interesting online, and you can get on the Library of Congress and put in Metropolitan Life Insurance Company, and all of their old the little 19-page brochures will come around, and it'll show children living there, daycare happening there, and some people never even left the facility, and they lived and worked there. Colgate-Palmolive was doing a similar experiment on us, and they did not inform us. So they do these social experiments, and then they use that, and they started taking it into the government. And the government, the president started adopting these, and the congressmen, the profits got bigger and bigger on this flip side, so if they could create these birth certificate based on MetLife's documents, because there was a huge fire that a lot of the records got burned in. So MetLife testified in this little skit I got, they testified that they're really the ones that supplied the government certain identification documents, but not all identification documents. And in 2011, the California Insurance Commissioner, Jim Jones, and it's hard telling if he's Jim Jones's son or not. Who knows? He looks like him. He starts investigating him. I called them and talked to him. They called me back. I talked to two of the girls. They called me back. I sent them my information. But they already knew because it was all just a big joke. These guys act like Laurel and Hardy in this video, but they're admitting that they started the family reunification programs, not just one, but two. And this Ancestry and the FamilySearch.org are actually owned. I know for sure that Ancestry is, but they're controlled by Primerica. And the people that get in there to put in this fake data, because my daughter had one property. She bought one property, and she had two little boys, and she'd never been married. She goes in to buy this property. She doesn't know anybody. She's living there 4 years, making payments to who knows what. I do know what property it's, but she gets foreclosed upon wrongfully. She's not behind, so I say, let me look at your papers. She lets me look at her papers, and I say, I see backdating. I want all your papers. And she's arguing with me, going, no, Mom, no. I said, come on, let me see them, let me see them. She's like, I don't want to upset you. I said, I love this. Let me see them. I don't love it anymore, but I just try to be happy about it. So I get a trash bag. We go in the basement, and I bring home a whole trash bag, and I open up this white folder from the real estate agent. And in that thing, I found, and I was telling my husband, I found the keys to the universe. You will not believe this. And he says, you're goofy. And he said, if it makes you happy, honey, though, I'm all for it. Well, that was $18,000 ago. So I just followed the paper trail on all three of those properties. I got all the mortgages. I got all the tax records. I did like a professional title abstract search on that. And then I brought them home, and I put them all in three piles. And I was able to see that all these dates lined up. So when I first got this file, I called the real estate agent, and I said, his name's Tim Orr from Lingle Real Estate in Richmond, Indiana. And he said, hi. And I said, hi, I'm Rachel Diddy's mother. She bought a house. He goes, oh, I know who Rachel is. How's she doing? I said, fine. I said, you got a minute? He's like, yeah. And I said, well, he said, how's her house? I said, she's getting ready to lose it. And he said, oh, I hate to hear that. I said, but I was researching this in her defense, and I said, I found it. She got 3 properties in here and 9 loans. And a mortgage affidavit stating she's married. It's typed on the back of a bug inspection report. Do you know anything about this? And he was like, oh, my effing G-O-D, and he hung up on me. Well, then he called back, and I didn't answer. And then I called the insurance company, the title insurance company, and of course she acted. I took it into her. I went and had everything done, and this is what I did. After I talked to that guy, I made sure, because I had it in chronological order, I made sure it was in good order, and I took it out to Office Max and had it photo scanned in. And the reason I did that is because on one of the title commitments, it said that they used commercial insurance services something. And the only thing I could find on that was a Japanese guy who had developed an inkjet sprayer that would inkjet so fine that only certain older printers could pick them up, the numbers. So it was like invisible ink, yet it wasn't, because you couldn't pick them up unless you ran them on these old flat top photo scanners. So I did all of them that way. I had him do all of them that way, and it was like 600 and something pages, because I knew I had to be organized. And then I took her down a disc, this administrator for this title company. Well, the title company's owned by the county attorney. It's owned by the county attorney. He's the CEO, and the city attorney practices in there too.
Wow.
So,
yeah, we found, the same thing was found out in Oregon too, in Burns County, that the judge, presiding court administrator, he was also sitting as the director for the Board of Health. So here he is having, connection or easy connection to everybody's bonds on the backside, and he's also administrating their estates in the court system.
And also, he has a great location for the children, the straw children that are created, which I was getting ready to get to that. Do you want me to go on and help me keep this point, Bryan?
All right. Yeah, go on with it.
Okay. So after I got this thing printed up, and I went down to this insurance lady, and I show her that I printed up a couple pages, and she said, "Oh, that's normal." I said, "You're telling me that this contingency and affidavit stating that my daughter's married to who knows who," I said, "you're telling me on the back of a bug inspection report that's 1 of 2 pages, this is not page 2 of 2. Somebody did this." And she said, and I said, "It is not normal." And I said, "And I got until October the 20th to answer this thing. So I will get back with you." And then I filed insurance claims behind the scenes, and that's a different story. But so then I go to the land records office, and I'm telling these women in there that I got this problem, and I'm like, it appears my grandsons had their identities compromised. My daughter does for sure. And she goes, who sold the house? I said, Paul Stickle. And see, he was in trouble with the mortgage company before, but the state let him completely go. They didn't do anything. They put his girlfriend in prison, and he was married. They put his girlfriend, though, in prison for 7 years, in federal prison. I don't even think she's out yet. Her name's Kathy Puckett. And that case is something, if you want to go get that case from Indiana, Kathy Puckett with the Attorney General, it tells how they do the scam. It tells how they make a person married, single. They're almost giving it away to their colleagues. Hey, this is how you do it. The way this chick did it, we're still doing it. Her boyfriend's over here. He does it. He's in with the judge. And he's got a lawyer named Charles Hyde who's committing the bankruptcy fraud, and he's pretending like he's these people that are already gone. They abandoned the houses. And that's what I found was going on here.
Unreal. It seems like the more and more everybody's starting to dig into this stuff, that it's just a huge can of worms.
Well, I can track it now up in Wisconsin, and I've been to Wisconsin a couple of times, but I really like finding the frauds. So I've been able to track now. I figured out that, and it's like this in all the different states, they might have a tiny bit of a different technique, but not really. I guess I could get back to this, what I was talking about the lot numbers. She bought lot 154, and it was tied to lot 14. It was tied to lot 4 via that old foreclosure case that had another case with the property in it. But the undisclosed land contract went to 14. So you got lot 4, lot 14 tied to lot 154. So you got a like lot number that's a number that's going to occur. So that number was 4. That was the constant. And I also got into the links online on DocsPop. and found out how they were doing that. And I have those available in there, too, to show you how they run cases concurrently. So let's say, Bryan, you're going to get foreclosed upon. You think you got everything you need, right? They're foreclosing. Here's my paperwork. Well, they don't tell you that they file another case with another judge, and then whichever one decides to open up an old court case of theirs under another property. It doesn't have to be the same. It just has to have a like lot number. So whatever one of those they want to open up, what they'll do is that lawyer that's going to keep that judge, and they figured it out, and they're going to open up a secret case, they'll put in a change of address and act like they made a mistake. And there'll be an overlap in those two filings under different judges, but for the same property. And people will think the case went away. It didn't go away. It just went to the juvenile count, folks. The big boys, that's the same way they do any of us. If I get arrested for 2 pounds of marijuana and a bag of marijuana brownies and disorderly conduct, and then they're going to drop the disorderly conduct. That disorderly conduct drops down to my minor account where there's paper doll children still in the system, because they're holding everything at an abeyance right now, or at a tolerance right now of 3 years on dead people, because they just corrected it in 2014. And I think it's due to this, because I was raising Cain before I knew not to. I'm like, look, this is what I got. And it appears that you guys are the ones doing it. So I got children here. These are, and I got hold of the Treasury. I said, I talked to this Rich Delmar, head counsel. I said, is it okay for bad state actors to collect federal funds on paper doll identities? And I said, by that I mean, the IRS lady told me that when somebody buys a house, it appears somebody is giving the traffic division my information. They write tickets, and the IRS doesn't require the last name to be checked or the birth date to be checked, but they do require the last 5 of a valid social. Then by that I mean not in the death master. Then they can create the identity, and they're off and running on the other properties, committing the other crimes. Plus, in Indiana, misdemeanors are 100,000 and down, I think, but felonies, and Cameron had 47 to 49 under that government-issued property, which the social is government-issued property. If they're stealing that, that's the way to come at it, I think, is to state it. They stole government-issued property, not my identity. I don't want to be that identity.
Now, to clarify, right, you just mentioned Cameron with those like 49 on him. You're referring to your grandson, right?
Yes, 97 warrants, and 47 to 49 were felonies. She said that Kathy Cox from Ogden, Utah, a special criminal investigator with the IRS, said that they had accessed the Wayne County, Detroit, Michigan criminal warrant database, because in that shadow docket, and I show them, there are reissued and reshifted weed liens. So in this system that had already been paid, and I knew they'd been paid because I'd been studying, and I thought those are already paid. So why did Paul Stickle come in to buy this house for $16,000-something? But then another person came in, and a lawyer, and he's writing a check from Mears to the clerk of courts, and they're paying the clerk. Oh, and she's going to send him some money back in the name of Mears. So I open up the shadow docket, and it says Dickinson or something like that. But you open it up, and it's under Deutsche Land Bank and Trust as trustee for comma. Nobody knows. It's a big mystery because there's lots of room for automation in that. And Mears Corp. And they changed the name in the file so that nobody would ever know it said that. And the Mears had written the clerk of courts a check, and a friend of mine named Donna Ray from Florida, who was a pretty smart chick. She's a constitutional expert. She called me up and she said, check your email. I just found where your city that's supposed to be unchartered is trading on Wall Street from the traffic division of the chief of police, from the police department traffic division, and they're trading on Wall Street as Highland Heights Golf Court through the Parks Department.
Unreal. And that's one of the things a lot of people don't know, is that their cities, their towns, their counties, that, we found that they're being traded on the market, and they do have a registration in Delaware, but so many of them also, they're doing the same thing also. They're splitting chunks up and doing it under a different name.
Huh?
And
they're using our birth certificates. They're not using it for cash. They're using it for back taxes on abandoned properties. They're probably using it for fees. They're using those birth certificates as a credit, but not a payout. So you can't get cash out of that, but you can barter somehow. That's true because I got my birth certificate tied to her stolen identity, and it's on the record.
That's what we're finding is you can discharge against it. And it's like, when I had first ordered my certificate of live birth here, several years ago, and then I went and ordered 3 copies again a few months later, like a year later, and those 3 that I had received last, that red number at the bottom, which is their tracking number, they said so they could follow where they've sent them to. Those 3 I received all came in order, number 3 at the end, number 4, and number 5. The only thing was that those certificates of live birth, compared to the first one I had received a year or so earlier, the numbers were off by 10 million. I'm going, how in the world can there be 10 million hits on my account?
Well,
so
what they might be doing, I think I saw what they did in Indianapolis, and that kind of concerned me. And I asked her about it, too, because I was in photo processing, and into transparencies. I do the transparencies and things like that for Eastman Kodak. I worked there for a number of years as a DM, and I set up the photo processing, the 1-hour photo things.
Right.
I set those up and managed those. So I forget what I was going to say. Daggone it.
What they were doing as far as like photoshopping or whatever, because what I was telling them is how there could be that many hits, and it's just not been on things that I've done in the all-cap name.
Yeah, and Obama just testified, I guess, that Arpaio saying something. They said the Arpaio and them found it as a fake birth certificate. And I've always thought he's telling everybody, look at his birth certificate for something. He wants them to see something to be like, do it like me. Well, we all were doing it like him, and this is why. They found forensically, and it's valid, that Arizona is the only state that every single sheet of security paper has that number pre-printed on it, and it has to belong to a birth certificate, and it can't have paper torn up. It can't use a shared printer. And when I was up in Indy, this girl kept trying to get my first certificate of birth. Anyway, it's Carol Lynn Coop, C-O-O-P. That's the birth name on that birth certificate. She kept trying to print it up, and they were arguing over who got whose birth certificate out of this common printer. And she's like, shred those. She goes, shred those. And I said, you got to shred them whenever they don't print? She goes, yes. And I said, so is that like, she goes, it goes, and I said, so what do you do? She goes, well, we put them out, but she said, she said, but sometimes we mix up between the two of us. So they were sharing printers.
Right.
And every time they print one, they could have been keeping it because and Obama said, oh, you mean I was a fictitious character all along?
Yep.
He just said that 2 or 3 days ago.
Yeah, and that's info that we've already discovered, and that was one of the things the investigator for Joe Arpaio had said was that because Arizona, it was the only state that is using that security paper where it's printed like that, and in order to get that paper, there's only one company, with it. In order to get it, it costs an arm and a leg. But though that he found in Hawaii that he could go and purchase the paper that they were using, and he could get like 1,000 sheets for $10.
Right. And an arm and a leg is an interesting statement because that's how Metropolitan Life Insurance Company, it used to be known as the Arm and Limb Company after the war. So you have a right to be armed in more ways than one. So they're actually, in your Health and Human Services guy, he's in a perfect position because of these fake identities. And my sister, one of my sisters worked in medical coding, and my family has, especially the older relatives of mine, they've been kind of like acting like I'm a little bit off the hook. They don't want to believe it, like I didn't want to believe it. So I've gotten some flack from them, and but my Aunt Bonnie is the exception to the rule. But these medical charts where the girls code stuff in, she calls me up one day, and she's kind of, she talked to me a bit about it, but she didn't want to always hear about it. I get all bent out of shape about this, and that's all I want to do. And I'm sure I'm annoying to my family. They want to talk about normal stuff, and I'm not normal in their book, especially the older ones. So So my sister, she calls me, she goes, "You will not believe this." And I'm like, "What?" And she's like, "Oh my God, I have a patient with 3 heads and 10 fingers, and I thought of you." Huh? She was deconstructing monsters in their documentation. These people are sick. They're playing serious games, and I mean serious games. I wouldn't be surprised if we're not in this other reality in an Eve world and we're an avatar. Because the Eve guy was...
That's what I was just thinking.
Yeah. I thought it a long time ago when it first happened, because the guy that developed the system, DocsPop, is a Python. He's an old Game Boy, and I was in there for a long time before I discovered exactly what was going on, because I didn't even know until, for sure, March of 2013, and this started in September of 2012. And I didn't come online with it until September the 2nd was the first time I came on that USFL show, because they thought I should get it out. And man, did the phone ever ring. It rang off the hook day and night, and I had unlimited minutes through Comcast, and they shut off my unlimited minutes because I had too many calls. I just had to have been running a business, they said.
Wow.
And it was just people that needed help. And then Trude tried to do a DocsPop, and he's got a DocsPop video to try to help people so they could search it themselves. Unfortunately, not every state you're going to find it like that. It's going to take somebody getting their paperwork and going to the land records office and getting every single description of that property. Don't just look it up by address. Don't just look it up by tax PIN number. Don't look it up by lot number alone, but usually lot's pretty safe. And you can also look it up by addition and find where you might have an overlapping, 2-foot interest, like you and I were talking about, those 8-foot sections that they were running through everybody's property here.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm just kind of all over the place tonight. I apologize.
No,
reported anyway.
Yeah.
Correct me, Brian. I need help. My mind's going 90 miles an hour because I've had an emotional morning. You saw what I had, right?
Regarding your grandson?
Yes.
Yeah, that was incredible. You can elaborate on that because not everybody has seen, very few people probably have seen that video yet.
Yeah, that video needs to be shared far and wide because this lady is going to, my daughter can't go in there because she's furiously mad. But my grandson, the one with 97 warrants, and he's had those since he's been like 4. They haven't done anything to fix it yet either. And it's been reported. I found it fair and square. I wasn't trying to harm anybody. I was just trying to protect. And to do the public a service, and I think it's a grave concern, and I think a bunch of wrongdoers are collecting federal funds on paper doll prisoners, and the felons are $100,000 to $400,000 each per year. They get federal funds for that. So when the grandson's got these 97 warrants, the schools start retaliating, and I have a video out on my Facebook page. It's under Carol Keihn, Keihn, and it says "Child Bully," red button. Press that, and in that, and it'll be in my playlist too. There's a description of every kind of a summary of what's happened, and I have it in then time. It wasn't the now time, but it was in the past time, so it's memorialized that way, and my memory's fresher on it, and I'm a little more organized because I was good and mad this morning, and I've been up since yesterday because I got this video last night after midnight. My grandson, Cameron, he's had trouble at school before, and he's no angel. We don't think he is either. But he has been accused of being in a knife fight. He's a real little kid, too. And it's no wonder he's so mean now that I've seen what I've seen. He's been accused
I just want to let people know, too, I shared that to Tactical Sovereignty if anybody wants to check out that video.
Thank you. And listen to the teacher cheering him on, the kid, and saying, you did good. They took, I do need to talk about this, don't I? So Cameron, anyway, got in a lot of trouble at school. It's in the description of that video that I have. If you go to YouTube, not everything, but almost everything, I state what happened to him and how this happened. He found porn on the teacher's computer. He's a little bitty kid. They kicked him out last week and said he hit this little boy. And they said that he was insubordinate in the lunchroom. Well, there was a child there that, there was a child there that videotaped or recorded it on his phone, and we didn't get it till last night. So Cameron was telling his mom, but I tell you, I didn't do it. I even had my hands down and everything. I did not hit him. You should see him. He's huge. And she was just kind of like, whatever, you've got to behave. And I've told him before, you got to behave. And I've told Rachel, take them out of there. Take them out of there. They are in danger. Get them out of there. I will homeschool them. No. We're not. They won't listen to you. And I'm like, yes, they will. Yes, they will. So now she's going to take him out because they said this about Cameron. And the picture clearly shows this, that there's a teacher standing there right beside them, this huge boy. I mean, he's huge. He's huge like a man. He's huger than most men. And then here's Cameron, and nobody's yelling or anything. And Cameron has his hands up like he's trying to get away from him because he knows about what's to come. And this kid picks him up, and Cameron gets up real close to him. And he told me this. He goes, because I knew I was going to go down. I said, well, that was smart. He got up on him because he knew he was going to crunch him. He might have broke his back had he fell on him like that. He put him down to the ground, started cussing him out, and the teacher is going, you got him. And she's not touching him. And then Cameron gets up. They get him separate. Cameron gets up, and this other teacher comes from stage left, puts her arm around Cameron's shoulders and neck, takes him back to an isolation room called ISR. This boy that did this, she goes, you got him. She goes, you got him good. Go have a seat. And she pats at him. And he goes and has a seat. So that's all that I know. Well, then the principal calls up Rachel, said he hit a boy, and he thought everything was okay, and that Cameron was being disrespectful and insubordinate because he wouldn't eat his lunch. Well, come to find out, this is in a library that doesn't have a camera. This looks like a prison-type setting almost, this fight scene. They take Cameron back to isolation, the victim, and they tell him he must eat an ISR lunch. I said, well, what's the difference? He goes, the ISR lunches there's curdled milk. He goes, and the applesauce is dry, and they give you like real stale bread with peanut butter, and those guys get pizza. I didn't do anything. So he got sent home for the rest of the year for that after they isolated him. Well, I get on Twitter, and this assistant principal, he's like, looks like some kind of child. He just looks creepy. He's holding up Fabuloso. Fabuloso has an antifreeze type thing in it to keep it from freezing. It's deathly toxic. And it just came to my mind, what if they are doing a prison library to school library scenario under a class named Success that's ran by a paraprofessional named Miss Richmond, whereas she has the boys participate in a roast. And that's what happened after the roast. Cameron won the roast, and that kid beat him down, and she cheered him on, and she did not have him checked by the doctor. They put him into isolation. The other child was patted and treated. You should see it. You have to see this. And I am pissed. I'm mad.
Well, we know that the public schools have really become nothing but a training ground for prison, is really what's happened.
Well, that's good because it's called Test Middle School under Julia Test, and I'm sure they're doing a study. It appears that chick is. And I find it interesting that the schools, my grandson got in trouble, both of them did, for not signing affidavits in blank because they're having them do that. And my granddaughter got in trouble last year because she said, my grandma said I didn't have to vote and you can't make me. They're voting.
Yep. Unreal. Yeah, they teach them at a young age. Teach them at a young age how to be good little workers.
I think they're voting them as the people that are in the system because, I haven't even talked about this. My grandson was arrested wrongfully, and the Captain Shake, the local captain, wrote a report going, I don't know why we're arresting this boy. They said he wasn't here, and he was going in the VP, and he was like 11, 12 blocks away from this place. And the guy that wrote the fake, the prosecuting attorney's assistant that wrote the fake thing for the arresting officer completely contradicted Captain Shake. So They got Zachary. They were holding him in there, and some great harm came to him. I'll tell you that. It was really bad. They brought in special people, and they were beating up people and all kinds of stuff. So I'm calling up Captain Shake, and I'm the public defender. My daughter happened to get hold of Zachary's documents. She gave them to me. Well, inside of there was how I know that they run it down to the minor account. So I happen to know who the reported perps were on this run. There was no minor with marijuana or runaway charges. And they're also targeting race in that population, by the way. It has to do with voting, too. So here's Zachary getting arrested at 18, 8 days into 18, and he was going in the BP. It was daylight. And then his friend Sunder. And then, and I do a video about it. I got the video showing all this. And then there was a 17-year-old that Kyler, I can say it now. He was there. So there was an extra juvenile report under Zachary's produced documents that they produced to him, and it showed that in the status it said, "Change me" in all capital letters. Well, that's the school system's online system. That is their generic password, "Change me 99.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, I got them, and they can kiss my grits, I tell you, because this is not okay. And I'm learning like that. Karen, I sent you Karen Fedigree's thing, correct? The lady that said who here holds superior title?
Right.
And they couldn't answer, and they were freaking. And she said, "I order you to release the security immediately." Well, guess what? They did a complete turnaround. They were going to put her in a 72-hour mental health hold and drug her up because they took her as guardianship of her when they had no right. She was working. And they are turning it around now. Not only that, I'm pretty sure some people are going to go to jail.
Well, yeah, I hope so. And that's right down here south of me in Naples. That's going on there.
Yes.
I've been following that for a while. We got a few people on the call here. I don't know if anybody had any questions or comments or anything for you. I believe the board is unmuted if anybody wanted to ask anything. Here's your opportunity if you want, whether it's regarding property or whatever information that Carol has found out, because
they might have already heard of me.
Well, I'm sure. I would hope so.
Well, I mean, they might already know what I know, because I'm pretty limited on the fraud part. I just, I do know that they should be looking out for their names being misspelled, and they will be misspelled like a certain way. Like in the heading, it'll have your middle initial, first name, middle initial, last name, or it might just have your last name like it's a trust in the heading. And in the very first part, they'll get rid of your middle initial, like a first paragraph, and then the second part, they will start calling you Mr. or Miss, and it's usually Miss. It's hardly ever Mrs. They want you to be a Miss because they can take and own you better that way if you're not another man's property. Because here's the bad news. Merry Christmas. I say that. Here's the bad news. It's all under Sharia law. It started in 2004 under what's called an ISDA, International Swap Derivatives Association, 2004 Master Agreement. It entered in through New York court. All contracts must be, and all securities must be compliant with Sharia. And that's why we're seeing erosion of our civil rights and what we think it should be. Well, it hasn't been since 2004. Thank you, Mr. Bush.
Even civil rights, who wants those?
They do, because that's their payoff on the Office of Federal Contractor Compliance and Procurement. They are running a mill on the backside. That's their private payout. When I said they went through the brackets and they got paid out through the parentheses, well, that's the side B of their record. And all of those employees that are having sexual harassment, being stalked by the Parks Department or the EPA who's watching porn, all of them, they're all fake, and they're all tied to the Wells Fargo. 2 million employees. They're never going to admit it, and Wells Fargo is a huge, huge part of this, and they pre-planned it. I got a video on it. It's with Alta and Wells Fargo. The main link's in there. They pre-planned it. They said it was coming up, and it's something that they had to do after the safe harbor was over under 4192. And I have a recording of that in there, too. Because they quit judging us, or they quit having judicial courts. They started having only administrative courts, and they had to hurry up and end their safe harbor February of 2016 because there were going to be litigants, but it wasn't going to be them.
Yep.
That's what they said.
I remember when I was in court here probably over a year ago, I had my head down looking at something at the time, and the judge said to me, she said, "Well, do you know who I am here?" And I said, "I perfectly know what." I'm sorry. I said, "I know perfectly well who you are as the court administrator." And I wish now I had looked up to see her face, but she went totally silent on me after that.
Huh? Well, she knew you knew.
No. And you
and
know,
they think they got me up there because see they brought me back in there. You know why? That's pretty funny. That clerk of courts knew my name. She knew the name to put down. I was outside. I was behind the banister. I was behind the bar. I was behind there. I should have been free to go at any time. But we were held there. So they put my name in there, and they actually did a deposition of my daughter. And when I went in, I said, "I'm here to take notes." And they were recording me then, and they had I just catch them doing stuff. I called up to get transcripts for my daughter's testimony from this discovery abuse. And the girl at the Veritas or whatever it was, she said, "Do you want Carlo Isaacs?" And that's me. See, I'm Carol. "Do you want Carlo Isaacs?" And I said, "Sure do." See, because it ain't over till the fat lady sings. And I'll tell you, this fat lady's got a whole bunch of land in those pantyhose. This bunch here, they're hiding a whole bunch. They're just tucked in so tight. And it's pathetic. They're in big trouble. And they need to be because I can prove it and a whole bunch of other people can. That's the good news. Now, I don't know what we're going to do about Sharia, but I think a 10B a Securities Exchange Commission 10B5, I think, they're in non-compliance with that. That's just one thing. They're also committing market-to-marketplace manipulation, and I happen to have QSIP numbers on a court case. I can't say whose. That is a valid. It's from a Wall Street broker or from an actual broker got this. They are QSIPs. They are securities. They are traded. I don't know where they're traded now because Wall Street's just a fixture. It's all online now over the worldwide netting system they have.
Yeah, we know that they're definitely trading stuff on that. Yeah. And
where's David at?
Feel free to jump in. Yeah, I messaged him. I haven't heard anything from him today.
And maybe he went to sleep because he works awful hard, and he was on it today. He had some good stuff. And this is David's, but I'm going to tell you it's pretty cool. DBA. What does DBA stand for?
We think it's doing business as.
Okay, now think of some kind of an act of some kind.
Oh, Lord, I wouldn't know.
It's around the Miller Act time. When the Miller Act was in place. I don't know either. I can't remember, but David told me. I said, that is, and it's right in there, too. So you got to have him on. So there's different, and they're also using anagrams. So let's say Hillary's basket of deplorables, right? If you put those words in an anagram engine, you're going to find out that we're operable, we're able. There's all kinds of words that we should not be in there because these guys, just like Obama said, you're dealing with fictional characters. Of course we are. Every single character on that brief is very, very important because you shouldn't just go by words. You better be going by the characters they are. They've got Braille. They've got musical notation. And they have signals and secret messages inside their briefs. If you want to look at something, go to Yale University Law Review Skit and go to Full Faith and Credit Law Review and on YouTube, and they'll sing it to you. They'll say what a fool you are. They got your full faith and credit. They'll take your jurisdiction any day. I mean, they're slick. They're right in your face with this. But they don't count on us old researchers checking them out and finding them.
Yeah, I was reading some information the other day on the Reese Committee that was set up by Congress after World War I. And what they had done, they had pulled this gentleman in. I'm trying to remember his name. Norman Dodd was his name, and he was the one who was going to be in charge of the Reese committee. And what they wanted him to do was look into a handful of
Banking Act.
No, this was way back. In fact, this gentleman is since dead. But he was supposed to go in.
So was that DBA, though?
Oh, yeah, absolutely it is.
It was done way back then, too. It was back, so I was just hoping that you just found it. That Dobbs, you said?
Norman Dodd, that's his name.
Okay.
But, yeah, so he was supposed to go and look at some foundations because Congress wanted to make sure that they were being compliant with the U.S. and they weren't doing anything to harm the U.S. And so he pulled together some of the smartest people that he could find, to help do the research with him. And he started out with, I'm trying to think of the big foundation. I'll think of it in a minute. But he started out talking to them, and they said, listen, you can have a look at all of our meetings ever since we were created. And he thought, oh, my gosh, you guys are idiots, And so he took a young lady and had her with some other people because it was going to be thousands and thousands of pages to look through. And this young girl thought, there's no way some of these big foundations, Carnegie Foundation. He says, there's no way. She said, there's no way these foundations are going to do anything to hurt America. They're actually put in place to help is what they're supposed to be doing, is helping people out, whether it's getting into college, whatever the case may be. And by the time she got done, she came back and she says, you won't believe what I found. Because what their number one goal was when they started out was they went for months in committee trying to find, is there any way to change the minds of the American people without using war or a war scenario? And they discovered, no, there was no other way. So then they spent a few months figuring out, okay, how do we create a war? And lo and behold,
they got a card deck of those people up there at 9.
Oh, yeah. No, yep, you're right. And this girl, by the time she got done going through this info, she went mentally crazy. They had to put her, fortunately she knew some people high up in the government, and they put her away in some little printing office, so she would have a job. But it drove her mentally insane to believe what the United States had done and allowed to, occur. Because they did not want, the idea was they did not want the way that people lived or their mind frame to go back to the way they were prior to World War I. They wanted to totally
let it go back
change.
Because everybody's finding out, huh?
They wanted to totally change the American family. They wanted to put 2 people in the workforce. That way they could make double the money. That way the children would be raised solely by the state and indoctrinated by the state, whether they're in school or sitting in front of the TV at home.
Well, in 1987, Bill Clinton, I think he was a governor then, went up before the Congress, and they admitted, and I have a clip of that, they admitted that time is not a barrier for them. Because one of the things that happens under these novation transactions under the ISDA and the Sharia, the novation transaction it has trigger events that have to go into place, but they can't go into place until into the future. But it's really so you might be having a court case and you're looking at things or maybe the judge is saying this date or that date, and their dates are often in order, right? And you're like, I wasn't here, and that was a Saturday anyway. What are they doing with 3 different dates in this order? Well, that's their mechanism to go back and cause and get in between whatever event in a filing they didn't want to happen, but keep the one they did. So let's say an anonymous person puts a bunch of silver into the case, and they serve it up with a affirmation in the nature of an affidavit of fact that is frickin' awesome. But later on, the judge has an order with 3 dates in it, and that date just happens to fall between the silver and the affidavit. The court then keeps the silver, rules against the person because they struck the affirmation for no reason. Well, that's a fraud upon the court, and it's a violation of or noncompliance of Securities Exchange Commission 10b-5, I think, and several other things. But this novation transaction and the Sharia law is so important that I think under this new I'm thinking, because when people find out that all of this is happening and their children are being No man's even winning his children. This is what the court's doing. They're using grandparents in the text. In the briefs, they'll make a reference to one of the grandparents, depending on which. It's usually the mother's, but you never can count on that if they're trying to claim fatherhood to court. What they'll do is they will give them to the weakest partner, and then they will actually, in between there, name extra children, and they'll end up turning those children over to the father. He thinks he's got custody, and he doesn't know that they got paid 1031 plus they got $40,000 per placement. And neither parent's winning. They take all their assets, and they hold it, and they put the mother in guardianship. They give the father the kids, and they're just hoping the kids will be screwed up enough to have to be institutionalized.
Yep. And that's their goal. I mean, right down to the food that they're eating and the vaccines that are being given to the kids. I mean, their minds
like
are not
that school. Yeah, like put him in that back room. Say, eat this, or else you're going home for insubordination.
Right. And who knows
if they gave my two grandsons a ride home. They just gave him a ride home in the middle of the day, and they they put him in the back of the sheriff's car, and there was a behavioral dean from one of the colleges. He's on staff there now because they're doing a study, I'm pretty sure. And they took him home with the lights on and gave him to my daughter. And she goes, "Why didn't you call me?" They said, "Well, we were all right just to take him home." And the boys were like, they turned the lights on and everything. They were going real fast.
Wow.
Is this not?
Hello?
Hello?
Oh, you're doing...
Hey, is the floor open for questions yet?
Oh, yeah.
Sure. We can take a question. Who is this?
Hi, my name is Darlene. I'm out of Richmond, Virginia. I have a criminal complaint dealing with my son. He was recently detained, and he's locked up, and it's a federal charge. They say it's a code, Title 18, United States Code, Section 924, in parentheses, lowercase a, and parentheses 1, and then parentheses capital A, did knowingly make any false statement with respect to the information required to be kept in the records of a licensed firearm dealer. He had his ID, which had the address that he used to live at, but he was banned from there. And so therefore we went to his hearing on Friday, and we tried to get them to release him, to me.
What are they saying? What's wrong with, what's wrong? Well, what are they saying that he did, that he didn't have something, his license? What are they saying that he did exactly?
They're saying that the information on his ID, he gave false statements. And,
that's the state of who issued it. That's government issued property, and it's either a felony or a misdemeanor for them to even ask for that and bring that up. To create parole evidence to bring one to parole demise is not okay.
Okay, so he walked into a gun store. He presented his ID. He filled out the paperwork. They said it has 10 questions, and they said that on the question, he falsified, he made a false statement, and he's 21 years old, and he doesn't have a criminal record. His first time will be for a felony charge, and he has some college, and, he's a smart young man. He's just misguided right now. And
yeah, I got some of those, too.
And they're trying to make him a misfit, but they're saying that they have other pending charges that may come in the future. So they were trying to say that they are saying that he was part of a big investigation. And we didn't even know that the ATF had been following all of us. They're monitoring.
Well, they got to have somebody, one of the things I found in this case of my grandsons, I didn't get to talk about that. I got into the DocsPop system and I found where they were running things concurrently. But one of the things when I got in the shadow docket, there was notes from that clerk. She had parsed out, split up the cause number. So I thought, so I called them up and I talked to them. And I said, so do you guys ever enter anything into another system, or is it always just DocsPop? And they're like, one system, DocsPop. I said, who enters it? Can it be a third party? She's like, no, it has to be a clerk. So she's entering this stuff with a parsed out, like 89D means it's in Wayne County, Indiana, which is Richmond, by the way. My comptroller has a fur and jewelry dealership over in Richmond, Virginia, and they just fired her about a year ago, maybe 2 years ago. Something funny was going on, but it's funny that she has the city of Richmond has a fur and diamond place in Richmond, Virginia.
Allen Furs, that's one of the biggest ones.
Yeah, and no, that's true too. And I talked to that comptroller after she was fired, and she said that there was she was telling me the ways the money could sift through, but she still wasn't willing to give it up. So I did get information from her though about ghost employees and ghost prisoners and all kinds of just gossip you get locally. But your son, what we can do on that is so. This cause number, I went and put the numbers in DocsPop. It said, whatever you do, do not put numbers, do not put digits in the name field. So, of course, I did it, right? Because that's how I do. So I put them in there, and thousands of warrants come up. There's 4 layers of these warrants. And in the old Word, you could see how many pages? 4 layers, and sometimes 5, like the Army engineers, the way they splice off the country. And all these warrants are in there. They've already been paid or issued, or they're actually a product from that criminal warrant database. Guess what some of them were called? The name of them was AK 470972, Smith & Wesson, da-da-da-da-da. I called them gun running. And they're tying them to people's names. And I went to Kentucky, to the Attorney General, Kenneth Taylor, with Denny Payman, a constitutional sheriff, and 2 or 3 of his deputies. One guy had glasses on. I'm pretty sure it was recorded. We went down, and he thought voter fraud was going on in Jackson County, Indiana, so him and his deputies came up here and asked me to research it. Well, I couldn't get the voter numbers, but I had the candidate ID numbers. So I find that every one of those candidate ID numbers from Kentucky, and there was only 2 pages, and there's a picture of it on my Facebook in my pictures. They were all tied to illegal, unverified immigrant prisoners in the Arizona federal prison system. Every one of the candidates, even the one I was talking to. He goes, we need to see a pattern. I said, well, we can't see a pattern because you wouldn't give us the voter ID numbers, and that's what you should have gave us. Instead, you gave us this, and we want to know who wrote in there. And he's like, why? And the FBI was asked to sit in. They were asked to come in special. And he was shaking his head up and down, just writing like crazy. And I said, so what you got here? Since he was staring at me, I said, you got a case of bad state actors collecting funds on paper doll prisoners. That's what you got going on here. You got 2 hats going on. You got the good and the bad. You got the evil and the good. And that guy was shaking his head. And I said, I got into Silk Road and some of their robotechs because I learned how to be kind of a hack into their system.
So,
and that's what we can find on your son. So this is my email.
Okay,
can you write down my email?
Okay, I can do that. But I just want to also say that why would they let him purchase it was the gun, well, not a rifle, and then they notify the ATF, and they let him get in the car, drive all the way into Midtown, and then they, pulled him over and arrest him. So then when they brought him back to the office to ask him questions, I have always trained him and told him, if you're dealing with law enforcement, always say, I do not consent to contract. I want an attorney present. Mm-hmm. He said the ATF got mad and hit him in his face.
And that right there is what they're doing, and they can't. And let me tell you, that report I got on my grandson as a juvenile, it was interesting. It said change me in the status, but they wanted to make him of their race classification, it appears that they're needing young black males because that has something to do with the voting and the census and the diversity of population in rural areas when they're putting in these districts. So
what I wanted to do, my son already has a court-appointed attorney. I wanted to become the power of attorney so that I can get certain documents put in his case so I can either try to get the case shut down or, by putting a 1099-C or put the IRS and all the, other paperwork that I need to put in there.
Well, I got a videotape I did of my grandson who was arrested wrongfully on all this, and I show what I did, if that'll help, and then I'll be quiet now because I'm sure Bryan can help you in this. I'm not good with the other stuff. I'm only good at the fraud, and I'm kind of good at tracking it to where people can prove it later. Some people have proven it too. They're proving it, and they've actually did very well. But I would have to look at his papers. So if I
why don't you give her your email if you can?
It's CALISAAC 1961@gmail.com. And my grandson did that for me years ago. And my last name, I'm married, and I didn't know any better. I was married. I always had to be married, and I'm Isaacs. But so you'll see me online as Carol Keihn Isaacs.
Carol Keihn Isaacs.
Yeah, and they're real. That they probably picked him. Did he buy? Do you care if I ask? Did he buy several guns or?
Allegedly, in the past, he had with his, allegedly, that's what I heard. That's what they're saying. And they're trying to make it like they traffic guns to New York and back to Virginia. So
they traffic guns in Mexico, and they're running them over in Benghazi. And I had the guys from the Benghazi on the show Renee Powers and I. She's a great research partner, too. We had them on there, and we talked to them ahead of time. They had a gag order, and I said, so I can still ask you, can't I, Tonto? And he's like, yeah. So I told him about these warrants. And I said, could it be that there was gun running? And he goes, I couldn't disagree with you. So that's an agreement, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they're trying to set him up. And this is what's happening since February of this year. It seems they're talking about this safe harbor under 4192, and I knew they were coming after people, and they are, what I'm seeing, I'm working with Chava. I don't know how to say Chava's name right. That's just how I say it. Anyway, I'm working with Chava. Her two boys are up in New York on some property that they own fair and square, and the city and the judges took it, and they're in, but I found the fraud in that case because it's easy to track once you know what to look for, and it's the dates and the dates being off, and there'll be numbers off. We'll be able to look at this together. If you'll email me, I'll try to collaborate. I'm working on a case now, but I like to take a break from the mortgages, and I've never really had a gun case. I would like to try to help. I don't know if I can, but I'd like to try to help you find, if you could do a fraud upon the court, see if you could find the fraud.
Okay, because the thing
Let me tell you why. Let me tell you real quick why. I know how the judicial machinery has been affected. Here's a gift for everybody, another one. The judicial machinery was affected. That is one of the biggest prongs to prove fraud upon the court. How was it? Because we sold Germany useless cocoa bonds, and they are under the ISDA, and it caused Brexit, and it caused the machinery to almost come to halt. And some places it has, where they had to zero out, like in Cambodia. From 75 to 79, they had to zero out, and they zeroed out in Greece. So they're having these little mini explosions everywhere, and they don't want anybody to get it that, oh, my gosh, the paper that we put upon these flesh, blood, and bone men and women, that the paper has gotten out of control, and now we got to get rid of it. And they sold useless swap derivatives. We're the exotic derivatives. They sold it to Germany, and they took the hit for it. And they haven't fixed it because they're not bleeding this. It's a fat, closed system that needs to be bled. And they're bleeding it when they want to under Obama's closing everything out now. He sold his people out. He sold me out because I voted for him the first time.
I tried to tell my girlfriend that, but she felt like because of his hue, his skin, that he was for the people. And I told her there were so many executive orders that he has put in place that is against, not just, against mankind. And she would not believe it.
Well, I didn't. I used to say, my husband even, who's a strong Republican, real kind of like stern type, general-looking guy, he's like, I can't hardly stand Bush. I think I'm going to vote for him, too. And he may have. I don't know that way. But let me tell you, Obama has admitted some terrible things here lately, and he acts very, very angry. And his health care system, when I found those identities for my grandson, I copied them all, everything that I could. I memorialized it right away. And when I got them, there were my oldest grandson. It showed my daughter being married to somebody, and they got a divorce, and they gave away a child named Chandler Walker Bond. Well, the guy that owned the third property was Tony Bond. He divorced a Rachel Bond. They gave away a child named Chandler Walker, which is my grandson, Bond, to this guy named Daryl Collins in Spencer County, Indiana, where that clerk's specialty, every state has it, her specialty is changing minors' names. They then took it over to Vanderburgh County, where there's 3 different time zones in that one little county, and a judge gave him to this Daryl and Deborah Collins. And that guy was living in it looked on Google Maps like a beautiful house. I went to it, and it's abandoned, and it's tiny, and he has 9 ISET accounts, which is foster care payments, and he's hooked to Chicago Home Health Care, which is one of the Obama hubs. And he's getting paid, and I know that child, he's with me. He's not down there, but his name is, and I told the clerk, I said, you are. She said, I'll pray for you. She's Pentecostal. I said, and I used to be nice to her. I said, you're just as bad as a judge. I've seen that. And I said, you don't need to pray for me. I need to pray for you because you're going to burn in hell. You and that fat man judge are going to burn in hell for what you're doing to our youth, our futures. You're enslaving people, and you are running immigrant children, and you're exploiting children, and you're trafficking children. And you need me to pray for you because I'm telling you, you're going to burn in hellfire.
Well, you know what? And their whole saying their children are our future is exactly true. They're putting our children in the futures market.
And they are. And Obama did. Now he'll give up some stuff. Obama said this. He said that George Bush gave our children by name to China. And he just recently said that, and I got the video. I'm going to study that more. Because I'll go find out where he did that at. I can find out where Bill Clinton brought in the Full Employment and Education Act, and he enslaved the dropout population and brought in those institutions that put in troubled youth, and they took control of them at that point. But they wanted the money, and they talk about it in 1987 under a congressional, America Full Employment Act, I think is what it is. So yeah. I've been tracking it I've got the congressional testimony because I'm going to prove this on paper. And what are they going to say? They can't say anything. I did it on my daughters. I said, hey, MetLife is doing a buy, sell, sell, buy. They're taking people into 3 properties. They're giving them the wrong loan right off the bat. They got into foreclosure. They collected on the insurance. They couldn't answer any of it to date. And it's all in your documents, dear.
So this is my next question. I asked them, what was the bond? They said that they don't have a bond, a cash bond, in the federal court, and that
David Roach knows about that. He's studying that. David, and they do too.
And they said that they could only have him released.
It's a blanket one, he told me, and we got blanket policy. It's a blanket bond policy.
What else were they saying, though?
I know it's a taxable event. I mean, if you put the 1099-C, I know that would assist to help shut the case or stop it or do something, because I know they're trying to make money off on the back end. And I explained to my son,
I ought to send her or get you to where you could talk to your boy, the Karen Federighi, because she was taken into custody at 57. She worked at the jail. She was perfectly competent, but she inherited a bunch of money. Well, they served her in Florida with papers that they were taking over guardianship within 9 months. Within 3 months, they had her in a nursing home. She lost her car and her license. They took it away from her. They took over the. I know it was over. It was probably close to $1 million, but they were in there spending that money, and they put her in a nursing home. She's a 57-year-old woman. She's only 2 years older than I am, and she's perfectly competent. You will see in this video. Let me tell you, she did exactly as I told her. And Michelle and Boris, Michelle Hansen from Colorado helped me with what to say first, and then I told her, I said, get that affirmation and affidavit in the nature of an in the record, and if you can't, you state it out loud. You make it clear that you were a whistleblower, and they have to afford you that protection. She did all that, and you should have seen them. They were like the magistrate who'd been handling it all for 9 months. And finalized it. She said, now, I just want to make it perfectly clear, I'm not here to make any major decisions. And the doctor they had in there to put her in the mental institution to drug her up, because they're disappearing people into these nursing homes. So, so what happened was a lawyer, I think, has seen this, and there's people going to go to jail. And they didn't understand how bad it was, but when they're seeing their own they're getting us, the middle class, a different way. They're hitting our youth and our old people, and the gap between the Old Testament and New Testament is getting smaller because they're going into 33 and 37-year-olds under marriages, and 57. That's not old.
And I know I can tell they're being harsh because they could have had him released to me. I used to work on the judicial system.
Can we get another question? Can we get another question in here? I realize you guys are having a conversation back and forth, but I have a question.
Well, thank you very much.
Hey, now email me, and I'll email you my phone number, and we can talk offline, okay?
Thank you, sweetie.
You're welcome.
And still I rise. Peace and love.
Thank you.
This is Susie. My daughter is in prison in Virginia. She's the wife of a lieutenant commander, U.S. Navy officer. He had a PTSD rage, killed a 9-month-old infant, and my daughter was sequestered, threatened, coerced, and forced to take a guilty plea for the death of that infant. She has served 7 years. She was given a 10-year sentence, and I want to know if there's any way to research. The judge retired right after this case, and she now teaches at law school. I'm sure that the Navy made a lot of money. The prosecutor and the defense were both from the Navy.
I have a case like that I'm working on now. That's a girl she was in Maryland, and she had a Chief Warrant Officer 3, and he was a linguist as well. It appears that there's a UCCJEA when children are involved, which is some kind of a No Parent Left Behind Act that allows them to transport them now internationally. So there's a JAG attorney as well involved, and it appears on all of the cases, and I've seen several, and a lot of them I've even seen Jewish pornography with the rabbi in these family court cases. It appears any of these family court cases, they always add an extra child, and they sequester the child. So we need to see her papers, and if we can prove fraud upon the court from discovery forward in federal court, they like it to be 2 years from your discovery date when you file the fraud upon the court. But they always go back and correct the error, don't you know? And they say this: if these people were too stupid to come in and fix it under a 60B3, so be it. We don't have a duty to notify them. Why isn't anybody doing these fraud upon the courts? Because it's got to be a judicial officer or an officer of the court committing fraud upon the office of and affecting the judicial machinery and not being fair. Anyway, I've got the prongs, so I can help you with that, but it should be a fairly simple thing if you really know his case to prove, or her case, to prove this. And they're doing it because she's under Sharia. And this is the thing, under Securities Exchange Commission 10b-5, they have to disclose to all parties. So when they do discovery, they think that's their disclosure to us. No, it's not. I'm not going to take disclosure a year after the fact and it's going to be okay. You can forget it because you got my offspring, my blood. You got me in there. You let me out. You let that property. You restore my property. And that chick says those kind of things, and she is going to be free if she's not already. They back completely off of her. And there's trust fraud and everything. And the other case, with what you're talking about with this military being involved, they are flat under Sharia, under that Guantanamo Bay bull crap that Obama did not close down like he said he was because they just want to make some more money.
The officer is her husband, and handlers came in right away, and they were on the front of their house, and he gave his name as my surname, not his surname. And the Navy whisked him away to the naval yards, and he was stationed at Norfolk, and they completely shielded him and gave him everything to say. And my daughter, she served 7 years. She was given a 10-year sentence. They did away with all parole in Virginia. Now everybody serves every second of their time. And I want to bring
there's
home.
A case down in Bryan, where's that case at where it's David gave it to me, Trevisan versus City of Miami. This guy got incarcerated for 25 minutes. They paid him $25,000 and found it wasn't excessive, and that's kind of like a precedent. So if you prove fraud upon the court, and there'll be some damages, and plus probably even up and above that. So I don't know if that makes you feel any better, but you can creatively do anything you want in their court as long as you know their laws, and you might be able to just plead it on paper because they sure don't want me to come in there and testify.
Well, I can tell you that, we don't want to do habeas corpus because other women at the prison have done that and had their sentence tripled. And, I don't want them to kill her because they're killing like 3 to 4 women a month at this prison. And I believe that you have the background and knowledge to research this and get her out the back.
Yeah, I can research it, and I can research it and try it for you because this is right up with what I'm doing now, and I know you're in a hurry, so I can help you is what I can do. I can help you to do it. I have a novation.
I went to Rod Class's PAG class, and I've talked to David Roach, but he doesn't have a lot of experience with this. And I
kind of dig this part. I dig the fraud part, so if I can get you to put it together, and I know all the prongs you have to prove, and I actually have a template that this young lady from New York helped me with. So make us a long story short, this chick was married, and what they do with the wives is the JAGs try to control them. So this guy went and moved for a divorce down in Utah. Now, he was not in Utah. He was in Texas at the time, but he actually was in Maryland, so he's using that residence domicile thing. One of the things David says to do, and it's in most state driving code, is we are not residents. We are non-residents. And we are age of majority, and that does seem to be very helpful. It does seem to work because that's what they're saying in their code. They're hiding these things from us. So that gives us some sort of standing if you have to go in there. Now, I've got the prongs for the fraud upon the court. That's a blanket policy because those were blanket bonds that they sold to Germany, and it's real fresh now. See, it caused Brexit. It's not the vote that caused Brexit. It's to keep Germany from failing because they had to take back under their, it's called bank box or box bank. It's part of the DHS delivery service. And all of the Deutsche Land Bank and Trust is in the background in the court cases on every one of them. And Mears operates through them, and Mears' mom's mortgages, Mears' original mortgages, are kept and housed in the courthouses throughout the land. And it's in line with all of the congressional testimony who said that Mears was reflected in the court system. You just didn't know what that meant when he said it, and now people should because I have that mom's mirrors mortgage to show people what it looks like. They use an EIN. And so there's one case, 2 mortgages, and one of them is a mom's original mortgage. Now that's worth $700 trillion, according to that Joe Escobar and all those analysts.
Well, the thing is, their 3-bedroom home in Virginia Beach has been vacant for all of these 7 years.
Uh-huh.
So I don't even know what kind of anything went there. The payments are made. And I wanted to make sure I had your email correct. Is that CALIS?
C is in Carol, A is in Apple, L is in Lynn, I is in is, S is in Sam, A is in Apple, A is in Apple, C is in Carol.
Okay, 1961@gmail.com. Okay, great.
Yeah, I know it's a long one, but my grandson made it, and I keep it all in one place. You're welcome, and I'll try to help you if I can. So we need to get a whole bunch of people figuring it out so that they are forced to correct. And she can be, is any of the Innocence Projects or anybody trying to help, or are they just off hands because she's a military wife?
No, because she pled guilty, and it's just too hot for them. I mean, she just wrote a letter to the Supreme Court Justice over prisons in Virginia about civil rights violations. And she had an attorney there 48 hours and said, "What do you want?" And they fired the warden. They made all the staff go through training. And then 2 months later, 2 guards showed up at her room and said, "We understand you're suicidal." They grabbed her. They threw away all her stuff. They put her in suicide lockup. And then they were ready to put her in the medical ward and drug her until she was dead. Except for I found out, and then I raised hell and kept calling and calling and calling, and they put her back in general population.
Okay. Well,
but,
and I do understand.
I just need to keep her safe.
Right, and you are going to keep her safe as long as they don't hear this. They're not going to know about it till you do it, and it's going to. Now, when you do this, the judges. And do you have her evidence?
The evidence was all manipulated by.
I know, but do you have her evidence file so I can tear it apart? Because I'll tear up whatever they've done. I'm very good at that part, finding what they've done and the discrepancies and how it should be. Like, for instance, New York extradites people under a governor warrant, and they've got a stapled signature. It's a parsed piece paper, and I have talked to lawyers who have said, "I didn't even notice that." Well, yeah, that's what it is because it's forgery. It's a fraud, and you can't enter those. It's like they're committing legislative fraud as well. But I think it sounds like we need to help her. I've just heard of cases where they get DNA and everything, and they still don't release them for years. So I don't want you to think that I can help you find the fraud.
Right. I don't have the evidence file. I do have a power of attorney for my daughter. Where would I go to get that?
He was a public defender.
She didn't have a public defender. She had an attorney that was appointed by the Navy.
And we need to do, David's going to maybe need to help with this. We need to do a request for a complete file.
Okay.
That's what we do. We need the complete file, including email communications, phone logs, anything, the kind of hours they spent on, anything and everything they have on her we need. And there should be a rule there under the attorney professional rules of conduct that concerns turning over files to clients.
Okay.
So you'd cite that in there, and you'd tell him you want everything, and he may tell you it's going to cost. And if it does, we're just going to have to get together somehow, and all of us have a garage sale or something, or an online sale or something, and get the money because unless they got tapes, because sometimes they do that. I don't know if Virginia allows that, but some of them are allowed to charge. Okay. Maybe he'll be nice and just give it to you.
My daughter did tell him after she was sent to prison that she wanted her complete set of documents, and he did send a lot of documents, and in those documents she found that the prosecution offered her a plea of 5 years, and her attorney never told her about it and turned it down. And of course, that's because they're protecting their man. It's in storage at the prison with her personal things.
Well, we may need to get that, and because he may produce some stuff that she's got extra. So I would advise getting this. This is what I did. I gathered everything in one place, and I had a great big living room, and I laid it out in years, and then I chronologically formed all the years, and then I put it all together. Then I scanned it in to an Office Max, so I had a professional Adobe PDF, and it could be transported between me and my research partners, which have been great. I've had researched with Jenny Fick and long time. I don't know. I'm not going to say the name because she doesn't want. I'm sure she wouldn't want me to. And Renee Powers, and Michelle Hansen, and Judson Witham, True Freeman, and David Roach. And I've been to David's house a couple of times. He's a very nice man, and he's very knowledgeable. He's good at the law stuff. I'm good at finding the fraud.
I live less than 5 miles from Renee Powers.
Oh, do you really?
I do.
Well, that's Renee and I were research partners, and we had a show, Two Moms on a Burro, you know.
I did not know.
Yeah. So I haven't seen her on Facebook, but I quit doing the show because I really would like to help some of these children, but all of it ties into the Sharia, and that's why they're not getting any rights. And I'm absolutely certain the military must have been taken over by the Egyptians, as far as I can tell. Seriously. And I mean Siri, huh?
Either that or DARPA.
Oh, I know. But I tell you what, I'm telling you, I was on a Saudi Arabian, I was invited, I had a show, and a Nusatelli, a shrink from New York, came on, and he does iPredator. Don't go on there either, because they do this thing with the IP on you, and they actually are the predator. So he comes on the show, and Eugene, this guy from Chicago that fought the city and won under a Patronage Act thing, he was on there, and the guy says, "You don't have any black hats?" And I said, "Yes, we do." He didn't think I knew what it was. I caught a hacker. I caught the guy that runs hackers.com. His name's Everett Taylor, and I got a film of him. I was invited on that show. These people started following me, the Voices Theory, and I thought, oh, great, they must be doing sound bites and voiceovers of all of us in their fake world, right? So I get on Twitter. They invite me to this Blab, which is a beta project, and you go in there, and there's these seats you can sit in, and you square the circle. When you sit in them, the circle squares, and you can be seen with 4 people in a screen. Now, it's closed now, but they kept trying to get me in. So I went into Saudi Arabia's chat room. They had 6 windows. Nobody over here has 6 windows, and their windows showed through when I went on, and there was this young girl named Nora. She's friends with me on Twitter. I'm looking at this, at my camera, and I'm trying to get in, and it's showing me, my name, and this man shows up, and he is not my man. So I'm thinking, I caught a glimpse of somebody that's not me. Somebody's in my camera, right? Well, I didn't know I had my camera closed, so that hacker didn't. When he hacked me, I was able to see him because my camera was closed. Well, Nora was texting me, this Saudi Arabian girl with a burqa and everything. She's like, don't worry, I record everything. I will send it to you. And she did, and I have a full facial and a side view, and it's him. His name's Everett Taylor. 3 hours later, he founded hackers.com. He was a homeless youth. Do you know, he better be glad I'm a compassionate grandmother, because I don't care. I'm not going to ruin his life. He had it rough, and he did well, but he got in my camera, and I bet he thought my word. And she's like, we were all talking when I finally came in, and she said, what was that? And I said, did you see that? She goes, yes, that was weird. I said, well, those are the kind of things that happen to me. And mothers know what's best for their children. We got a really good connection with them, I think. So I think it'll.
Great.
Your case sounds
Thank
good,
you.
and it may be a game changer for everybody. You don't know unless you try.
That's correct.
All right, ladies, it's 8:15 where I'm at here. So anyway, it's been 2 hours, 15 minutes for everybody.
Okay.
Tons of great information. I appreciate it. Thank you, Susie, for calling in. Susie's case is very interesting. I've been discussing that with her, and some other friends have as well.
Well, I would love to help, too, with that if I can help.
especially when you get the military involved in on something. It's like, you know,
Well, they're
you're right
doing
there with one of
something
the
with
heads
this.
of the dragon.
Well, they're doing something with the Civil Servants Relief Act on all of the mortgages. And they certainly are doing something with that. They're writing affidavits in some of the cases I've seen. In other cases, they don't write this. And I found that they're using a payout card for the veterans, a government-issued payout card, and it's like almost like a Bitcoin. And it's for family members. Well, the family members aren't getting them. The people that are victimizing anybody wants to divorce a service member, they're treating them almost like women over, like they've got a cow fight going on within the service, like they've got a place where they're going to execute people. And I'm not talking about your daughter. I'm just talking about, in their terminology, they talk about execution. So let's think about this. They sold Germany a bunch.
That's a little scary because their 10th wedding anniversary was November 18th, and they're getting a divorce.
Well, and they will get re-divorced if that divorce is not commenced properly under a ministerial act, which is another thing that the service is doing. We need to talk privately about this part right here because I don't want anybody to know what's coming. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on with these guys, and it appears there's been some religious duty shifting going on, like successors and interests somehow. And that's how everything's getting done.
Unbelievable.
And I don't know that I can help, but I'm going to try. I do have to sleep sometimes, and I'm working on that case, but I'm about halfway through, and then I'm working on the one in Wisconsin. And the one in Wisconsin, Brian, I know you got to go, don't you?
Oh, no, I'm good. I'm just thinking about, I guess, the other callers or whatever, or people listening, but I guess they can drop it if they want.
Well, it'll be recorded anyway. In Wisconsin, I was talking about the like lot numbers of my daughter's property. I went up to Wisconsin, and there was a property, and it was known as 463.A. But no, the litigation had been going on since 2009, and there was a note entered into the litigation. And I was sitting up there looking, and I looked at the case for a year, and I finally looked at it. I said, Chris, I said, they tried to make you responsible for this note, and I said, now they're trying to make Denny, who just came in, and he actually had a lien on the property. They put it all in his name. And I said, did you happen to notice that the note has the wrong address? It's not in the right city. And I said, and there's a letter in this file to a judge that is an chief administrative law judge. So I went, and they had mentioned the note was, they always do this, that certain note on May the 14th that was filled out in nowhere land. They don't make, it's real vague. So I went to the county where that judge presided, because that's where his jurisdiction was, to administrate this estate. I knew I had a letter from him that was given to this judge, which is a queue that we're administrating through here and through this attorney. So I go up there and I put into their land records under fair market value $344,000, and I got like 7,000 hits. So then I make sure, and it's lot one. I put in lot one. I got 40 hits, and I saw this name, and this is why I listen to however I'm led. I saw this name, and I opened it up, and I'm reading it, and it's a one-page document, and it said 223, formerly known as 227, 223, formerly known as parentheses 463.A. How cool is that? I found the shadow docket. They're running it through zero-numbered right-of-way properties in the county that the judge, that's the administrator in these districts in the states, are running. They're running a lien, if you will, like they'll use that property on the backside on one of their 9 layers. They'll use that property in that instance and run it through a zero-numbered right-of-way and secure a loan for that full amount and run it through a small patch of land to them. Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense. I'm a real estate broker here in California, and
we do have to.
I have been audacious. Well, I also was a supervisor at a national mortgage company, lender processing services, and I caught them in fraud for refinance mortgages in Georgia. And they tried to force me to sign an affidavit saying I committed a scrivener's error. I refused to sign it. And, of course, I got laid off, and then they came after my home, and I've been fighting foreclosure on my home.
Well, they do that on your home, too, so we got some, Yeah, we got some stuff to do because you can track that, and if you're not an insider on this and not an international tax real estate attorney that specializes in international tax, I don't know that you would, because they take it right out of the country on the sale. They put in your mortgage, they say, the first payment shall be made, let's say it goes through First Horizon Home Loans, and it'll say first payment to be made to P.O. Box 809, something, something, Texas. Well, in Rachel's case, that was a P.O. Box leased to Brandon Allen of DTZ Barnacky in Canada.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's right there in front of us. We just don't know what to look for.
The next action is scheduled for February 1st of 2017. They can't get me out of here with a crowbar. I'm not going. So.
Well,
I'm on hiatus from work, so I have time to, work on this.
Have they filed a lot of paperwork into the case yet?
I went to federal court twice on this, and I went to Superior Court for 3 years on this. I filed a Form 56 trying to save my home from foreclosure. It didn't stop the bank and foreclosure proceedings, but it did wipe out any obligation I have to pay IRS taxes. So, I mean, I'm doing the best I can with the wisdom and knowledge I have at that moment, but I haven't been able to get my daughter.
Well, you can. Yes. It might have to do with both. Do you know they're doing legislative codes like this? And I have it, and I actually it's posted on my page too. But they're doing legislative codes by saying that this person broke, let's say, for instance, there's not very many trial rules. Trial Rule 37A, they were not in compliance with, so we need to impose this legislation that protects the banks. But I have testimony where the judge says would it be true that we very often do this? She goes, I would agree with that because they had to get rid of me, right? And keep me at the same time without me knowing it. So, he said, I feel as if we are retaliating. And she said, oh, no, Your Honor. If we go in under a violation of 37A under Legislative Bill 34-10, I'm just making up stuff, -6.-5, and then what the chicks do is they put points in there instead of those dashes. So that legislative code might be for the lender's protection, but when you look it up, it is for an abandoned house, and not only that, it is for an abandoned child. And I have the real estate agent who actually has lawyers sit in his place, and they pretend like children were left at the house, and they put on fake scenarios like there was a divorce so they can learn how to do all this online. It's Real Estate 101 is what it's called, and the lawyers sit in and pretend like they're all getting a divorce. And you can tell that this would be what the guys that did this to Rachel, that's the course they took.
Okay. All right. I have a lot to learn. Okay, but I'm down for it. Let's go.
All righty.
All right. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Susie. Anybody else have a question or anything here before we sign out?
I was going to talk. Hello?
Yes.
It's Gloria.
Hey, Gloria.
Hi, Brian.
Hey, Gloria saw that, Brian.
I saw that video. It was horrible. I was going to say, the real estate patents are under Sharia law. That's number one. Number two, I think where they're, that the state under, with the Security Act of 1934, the states get $1.8 million per person in the United States. So I think that's where a lot of the money's company is being used. And also that the utility bill, what's that, utility company, GMEI or something like that.
Oh,
you put in your address or you put in your Social Security number. And all these utility companies all over the world, like I put my address in there, I couldn't believe how many companies had my address around the world. Unbelievable.
Yeah, that'll show.
I put my address in there I put my address in there one time, and then I put my Social Security number in there one time. And my Social Security had probably like over 8,000, if not more, or maybe something outrageous. It was unbelievable. So, this is where they're getting all this money.
Well, or virtual, I don't know, virtual clicks for like Bitcoins or something. I wonder what kind of money they're. I think it's that veterans purchase card that they wouldn't investigate at FSOC. FSOC invested everything but that government purchase card. I thought that's got to be it, what they're using. And remember, Gloria, a lot of people are trying to get this to be fixed. I do hear, and I have heard, that you got to go to an accountant and you got to file a special thing with the Treasury to be able to go to the payout window.
Isn't Ken trying to do something where we go to probate court?
I don't know. See, I'm not at that part because I'm just.
Oh, and then you were talking about the tranches with the mortgages. In my pool, I had 18 total.
Well, then you must have had some kind of that must have been a Jewish one.
No.
It was, I think. I don't know. I think they have different nationalities in these multi-state notes.
That one was weird. I went to CUSIP directly, and I gave him my pool information, and he says, Gloria, I'm not allowed to do this, but for you, I'll do it. And he gave me all the pools, all the tranches.
Did he give you the CUSIP numbers?
Yeah, he gave me all the CUSIP numbers, everything.
Wow.
He gave me everything. And he didn't give me the amount of money, I don't think. It didn't have the amount of money, but it had the CUSIP numbers of all my tranches.
Well, those CUSIP numbers and those tranches probably tie to the CUSIP numbers in the court cases.
And then, on top of it, my bankruptcy attorney told me that my mortgage was still being paid out. It was still being paid. It was still like an open.
And remember, you had two orders in your case. One was rubber stamped, and the other was signed by the judge. And both of them had the same date, but they run many court cases on the same date. And it was it June the 17th? And one of them had a mark through the 7th. So she had two separate orders on her property, and there were some other really odd things, but she was just doing. Gloria and I started talking right when you were doing the bankruptcy, right?
Yeah. Right
around the time that they took your house, and they even said in the order that it may not be permanent, that it may be wrong. Remember when I was telling you that it looks like there's something you could do maybe, and you told me that they had something about they held a pool for a year.
They did?
Is that right? Yeah, where you could go in and maybe it was Susan Hunter. Yeah, where I think I told you about it too, where they were holding they were holding some kind of proceeds. It's probably from the daggone. That's what I accused them of. I said they're not in compliance with the National Mortgage Settlement Act. They've actually joined partners with the state and the city and the county under this National Mortgage Settlement Act, and they've left us out of the deal. I kind of said so. I'm like, very well, let's open up this can of worms. And then I started naming the properties and the loans. And they were like,
Well, we know that even just through the CAFR accounts, they're making so much money in the states and the counties and the cities that technically, instead of people paying property taxes, we should all really just be getting a dividend check back from them.
We should, and that's what's going on with those parentheses, Bryan.
Wait a minute. I want to say something. You were talking about MERS earlier. MERS also stands for municipalities. They've got that connected to the municipalities, too.
Wow.
It's municipality employee retirement.
Yeah, something. Yeah, exactly. That's what I couldn't remember the whole name.
MERS is taken over. Did they take over? MERS is also a virus that came over, and then MERS is part of Miss Sewer, the old word. And MERS is also REMS spelled back in an anagram too. REMS.
This is all that big word game they play. Yep, it's all that word game that they play right in front of you.
It is unprecedented, I tell you. There is no precedent. And it is unwarranted, or the UN has warranted it. I can't tell which meaning it has. I don't even know what daggone country I'm in anymore.
It's just unreal, all this stuff that we're
It says that. Gloria, remember? Remember we looked that up. It says it in the visa tax, in the visa application now. It says country, and it says unknown in there. I'm like, and people were like, Gene Keating was like, it says unknown. I said, I'll tell you, it says unknown in there. Go look at it. It says unknown under the immigration papers. It's country unknown. So why is that a choice even?
Unreal.
Well,
because there are no physical countries. It's just all corporations. They'll just exist on paper. You can't see them.
Should we be unknown then? I mean, should we be unknown and name our own country and state and nation, and that would be Carol?
Yeah.
That's what True Freeman says. We're all our own state, nation, and all three of the people of and the state of, and they're doing nation state, and in India they're swapping it over to state nation. That's interesting, isn't it? They're coming with state nation, but here we're still doing a nation state.
Oh, I belong to my own nation state, but I can't name it because it's in the private.
Good. I got to, have you heard of Father Divine, the Harlem Shuffle with Time? He's on YouTube.
No.
Check him out. He's got a black and white film from the 1930s, and he had a group in Sayreville, New York, I think it was New York or New Jersey. Anyway, it's Sayreville. He wrote a new constitution, and he got the New York Supreme Court to let all of his people that were in his congregation come in and change their names on the spot at the voter registration box, and they became Heavenly Divine, Glorious Sunshine, Brave, Bryan. I mean, they all got heavenly names, and they did it on the spot, and he filmed it. And it's really weird because there's color in this film, Bryan. It's got blips of color, and it shouldn't. And guess who comes into the film? Guess who comes in? I'm going to send it to you. P. Diddy is in there because they're inserting themselves, and they know about these copyright clauses, and they know about some secret funds that are being held under these master father records, and they're called a master father. They also have a master mother, and they utilize silver and gold to electroplate them when they're creating them. So this is like a big fat record.
Oh, that'd be cool to see.
Yeah, well, look at the what is that one machine I showed you, Gloria? It's Babbage machine. The Babbage machine. Check it out. Because you'll see that really we should be dealing with 9 numbers, and that 0 is a rolling stone. It actually creates an extra space. So that 0, they're pretty clever. That is not a number. That is like a placeholder, and we are a 0. So when like a federal judge gets in your face and says, "You're a big fat 0," he's paying you a compliment. I just didn't know he was paying me a compliment.
He's telling you the truth. Yeah, a lot of times they are, and people don't realize it. Oh, Carol, while I'm thinking about it, because I had a couple people have been bugging me about this. I think you and Renee did a call here a few months ago, and it was with a lady. I want to say that she was on California. I could be wrong, but where a lot of people in the area had gotten together. They weren't just aware anymore. They were now awake, and their county was removing themselves from the state. They were setting themselves
Valerie
up
Lopez?
as an independent town. I don't recall.
Oh,
it
I
was
know.
Valerie Lopez.
It might have been Linda Almonte and Dr. Christina with Renee.
That sounds a little more
Yeah, I think it
familiar,
was
maybe.
because there's a strip of land right from California to somewhere where it's nothing. It's its own state. I know what you're talking about. I'll have to ask her, or you'll have to. I don't see her on Facebook. She might be taking a break, but yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. And the lady was talking about Colleen. Was it Colleen? Was that her name?
Maybe it was Colleen, yeah. But the people in the town were all voting and deciding to set up their own actual government, unincorporated, and just remove themselves. They were basically going to secede
yeah,
from
and
the
I
state.
know what you're talking about. I'll try to get that for you. So your listeners want that. I'll try to get it to you, Brian. I'll try to because I'm gathering things, now that I'm good and mad, because it's over now. Now it's going to be like, okay, you guys want to play, then let's go ahead, because I do know their rules in those courts if I have to. I know how to get evidence into the record.
Because, a lot of people have asked, we're finding all this out, what do we do about it, And I say,
well, the only thing I can
one,
tell from my 8 years experience under Richard Darst, a federal attorney who was 9 years a United States Deputy Attorney General in Washington, D.C., and from litigation prior to that, and some of it was by myself, and then David helped me with my son's case. I did my daughter's case in my house. They didn't even want to touch me. They zeroed out my mortgage. I went up and and I offset with my taxes too. So after that, everything zeroed out. It seemed like it might have helped trigger it. So I they had 3 mortgages that they screwed up because I replicated what happened with my daughter, and I replicated it here, and I got all the paperwork. I don't know, back in 2012, I was fighting with them because they had revoked their settlement agreement where we had remodded. So in 2012, they sent letters out. Well, then in 2014, this guy started calling. And I said, well, he goes, we're sending out letters because your mortgage was flawed. And I said, well, I don't have a mortgage. And he said, well, you have a mortgage. And I said, no, I do not. And I said, I do not wish to contract with you. And I'm going to tell you right now, I'm ready to go to court because I'm telling you. I said, how many? I said, let's say, tell me this. And I'm not admitting I owe you. You're telling me I got a first lien offer. Is there only one first lien? He goes, yes. I said, so which one of these 3 first lien offers do you want me to pay? Not that I owe you anything. And he said, well, it's 21. He goes, because of the mortgage and the taxes in escrow. I said, well, we don't have an escrow. You must have the wrong assignment there, buddy. I said, you tell me this. Mike Wright was his name, and he was doing Nation Star then, but the week before he was doing Aquin and GMAC and Wells Fargo, who has a power of attorney on all properties behind the scenes. Nobody knows. They got him in every land record you look for. A corporate assignment, Wells Fargo, and they're actually holding it, I believe, right now because they're being made to be the bad guys over the pooled fraud under the credit cards of their employees or their customers. And we have no way of knowing what's in that $2 million bundle. That $2 million bundle, he said on the 20th and 29th, on October the 1st, they would quit dealing with the purchase cards that they had issued on October the 1st. That's the same day that they gave the internet over to Keihn.
Right. But one of the things I was wanting to address, though, is people want to know what they can do about the whole situation, the problem, and what I've always said is, first of all, you've got to start at home. You got to start with yourself and taking care of your own status, and from there, everything that really seems to make any difference in this country is a grassroots level. And I remembered that county that you had shared, where the people had all woke up and said, you know what, we're removing ourselves. What are you going to do about it? Now, I know there was a county, I believe in Kentucky here a while back, that had done that, and the state had gotten with the surrounding counties and made them all refuse to contract with that county that had seceded from the state. And so they kind of had to reverse.
There's a strip of land between Virginia up there that used to be, it's named Indiana. Right above Virginia. It's a thin strip, and it's part of Indiana, according to what my research is still part of it. And there's something going on with the Upper Peninsula between Ohio, Michigan, and Wisconsin. And there is... and I'm intrigued by this, that I want to say Conch Republic. It's in Florida?
Yeah, the Conch Republic.
Okay. Well, they act like they're just kidding around and it's a joke, but they got invited to the delegation. And I think that they're real. And I think that it's the court jester's role in that place. And all of them, Obama and all of them, have passports from there. So if they can do it, that might want to be a model you would want to look into.
Yeah, I know the Conch Republic for years down here has talked about seceding.
Well, and Florida is interesting because in Florida it's kind of listed as an island because it sits on the water. Florida
Right.
and California seem to be pretty key here, and they're tied together through San Francisco. Somehow, Susan Hunter used to have to mail her papers in, and they would take it clear to Sacramento and send it back to Florida. Now, Sacramento is where those judges sit in camera, and they'll see people like out here in camera, and they deal completely with taxes and Social Security. Those judges do in Sacramento.
That's one of their entry harbors.
Is it?
Yeah, I'd say
See,
that's
they
one
got
of their
anchor
entry
dates.
harbors.
That's right. Renee said something when we first started doing some research. She said, "Oh, Carol, they have locked down the anchor dates have been blocked out because they won't let them anchor." So it's got to be a system like that, because aren't all courts really maritime, and they ought to all be federal, and they maybe all are federal because they're joined together through the fusion centers that the governors created in 2013 now. Things are changing, but they are joined together.
Yeah, they're all admiralty running under maritime, correct.
Okay.
They're all basically just military tribunals is what they really are. It's if you go into the Libra Code and read the Libra Code, you understand why things are the way they are.
I've had Chandler on my show.
They can pick and choose what laws they want to follow and what ones they don't.
But they've got laws in there for them to get out of. So if you follow a reverse engineer, this like you were talking about, we can figure the way out, because I'm telling you that when they use the word, like they're using keywords in these cases. For example, in my case, Cinderella was used. I never said Cinderella. I never said anybody treated me like Cinderella. Well, then there was another girl that I happened to notice that I was helping with, because I would gather evidence and put it together in a format. This lady trained me kind of special for these special federal affidavits. There's tricks to these things, you know. And they're real good tricks, and we'll talk about it after we do some and see how it works, because I don't want to give that away, and they won't know what it is. So they've got this code in all these federal affidavits. They taught me kind of how to do that, and these cases have keywords in them like Cinderella. This girl had the same thing. Well, I found out the moot courts were having Cinderella on trial. So, and it ties clear to the Queen of England. And here in Indiana, Baker and Daniels became Phillips and Daniels, and I heard that they had to be in FARA, Foreign Agents Registration Act. So I couldn't find anything for Indiana except for Phillips and Daniels, who is the state. They work for the state, and guess what? They answer to the Queen of England in the FARA papers. And then I couldn't find. I thought, well, maybe they're under the Inn of Courts, because that's where they have their moot courts a lot. So I'm looking up bar. And Baraka comes up, and I'm thinking, oh, this is interesting. Bar, a.k.a., also known as, right? And then, of course, Baraka is a common Kenyan name, but it's an old abandoned notice wanting to come in and do something with funds. And I did a video of it with all the links underneath, and it is really good because it ties into Obamacare and immigration, and you can do it all online, and I think it's their pay-through. Whenever I put that video out, Eleanor, the governor of D.C., started following me on Twitter. There's no reason for somebody like her why would she follow me? Because I hit a nerve when I said Operation Zero. She's like, what? How does she know about that? Nobody does. Well, it's on Jim Jones's tapes. He said nobody knows about it. I want to see this thing continue. He's from Indiana. He's from my town. He hung out with Dan Metrione, the Doctor of Pain, who was our police chief. Jim Jones sold monkeys door to door. Why would he sell monkeys door to door before the AIDS virus? Why would he go over to Jonestown and nobody found his body? Because they cremated him and buried him and brought his family back here, but they didn't bring him. Well, I've got a tape, and I think it's him, and I've sent it on to a guy who wrote a book about him called America Dark Heart. Kirk Connell is his last name. He's a very nice man. And I turned him on to all this because we tried to change pi. Indiana was given the gift of a formulation for pi. Instead of it being 3.14, it's 3.2. And so I show that on my videos too, and I show how the congressman, Governor Pence and Hillary Clinton are doing a game on the floor, and the chairman calls the time at 3.2. And then she starts laughing, and, oh, yeah. So they're busted because I've got an old guy that wrote a book before he died. They gave that as a gift to the education system in Indiana, and I've been to 3 colleges here. I got 168 credit hours and no degrees because I don't know what I'm going to do when I grow up, and I don't want one of their degrees. So I just like learning, and I worked at Colgate Palmolive, and they paid $10,000 a year for me to take courses, and I was there close to 10 years. So this pi was taught to me in those colleges. It was a gift to us. So I suspect that those zeros, they're using the pi calculation. So if your home's 160,000 and they're using their accounting standards, they would be making those zeros. Like in PDF, it'd be 10.5. But when I copy it and put it into 2007 or before, and it's usually 2003 if I really want to get it right, I copy paste. It goes from 10.5 to 27.5 font, which isn't even on their little measuring thing. And why? Well, why would they want to make it bigger than life? Because they're doing optical character recognition manipulation. So I'm just going to say one more thing, then I'll be done. Everybody go to Google Glass and put your name in. Okay? And if you want to, get online and go to a mirrored text machine, and you can put it in. It'll come backwards, like if you were looking in the mirror. And I suspect that in the IT department at the courthouses, and I got testimony to it, they're talking in 2012 in my county. They didn't think anybody'd ever find it, but the guy that runs the local station loved it when I accepted the public officials' oath down at the city. Yeah, the city people. They freaked out. They had me on hearing, and I'm like, I'm here to accept your oath. I shook their hands. So he didn't know what to, they just didn't know what to think. So they're busted all the way around with everything. This is Operation Zero. These are tied to zero numbered properties. And the Muslims, the Muslim community, and she's a real pretty gal, but they came out. There was a panel of them. They just did what was called the Great Purge. They were able to get everything zeroed out, modified first, the first purge, but the second purge that happened, the Muslim associations, because of 9/11 and the prejudice the government has caused about the religion, and they're causing it because they want everybody fighting, they got everything zeroed out. But these other, like Christians and the Hamas, and had different names, they didn't do a purge letter, so they got everything purged out, which means records were wiped out, which means this war was a war on terror, and I'll leave you with this. And terror goes like this: bracket, capital T, bracket, capital E, RROR, and it's all a error, and they get to correct it whenever they please.
Yep.
And we can correct it because we take that away, because there's a case, and they're laughing. They're saying it's not our fault. Nobody wants to take advantage of the 60B3. So be it. That's not our fault. We're going to fix the error because we knew we were going to have this. This is an unintended consequence, we got to say to the world. But truly, we already knew. We were going to do all this, and we were going to screw it up so we could go back and fix it, and nobody's going to know the difference. And we're going to get the insurance funds. And that's why none of the too big to fail ever go to jail, because Congress is their boss.
Yep. Order out of chaos.
Sure enough. And they call it influence in the books that they wrote. The guy that did us was a Stanford Prison Experience, Zimbabwe. It was Zimbabwe. Anyway, he was the guy that did the Stanford Prison Experience. And I was working there, and they were doing research on us. And so I happen to know a shrink or two in my family. And they're like, I care about you, and you don't look good. And I think that job, I think they're doing a study. But I can't tell you if they were. Maybe you need to look it up. And sure enough, they were. So Dick Darst asked the HR lady, who was an occupational health and safety nurse, "Are you doing a study?" She said yes. Within 2 weeks, that study was shut down. They can lose their brains and everything.
Yeah,
well, they're doing studies on courts.
Well, everything is a great experiment. When they said the United States was a great experiment, they were not lying.
They're still saying that,
and they've been experimenting on us ever since.
Well, I do not consent to this experiment, and I think that I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but this is how I think. And I've done some things. I've done a couple of things. I haven't done a whole bunch of paperwork like a lot of people have. I probably should, but I didn't know that I had to change anything for their system. I thought I was the sovereign. I thought I owned the place when I walk in. They were there to serve. I had not a clue.
Well, I think just higher up in their chain of command, it's good to give them notice.
I can't tell who's in charge. There's that book, Influence, that they wrote about this system that George, the old man, adopted, High Commitment Work System. It was called Influence. And what they said is, we'll wordsmith. They won't know what the hell we're talking about. And it's almost as if someone let the prisoners out and they're running the joint.
Yep.
And that's in a...
Well, to me, the one that's in charge, at least I could identify, would be Secretary of State at the federal level. Because even you look at the name Secretary, it's a secretary. I mean, they're the holder of the secrets.
Hey!
And when you look at who the fiduciary is whoever holds all titles, certificates, bonds, etc., which happens to be part of the definition of the role for Secretary of State.
Oh, David's asking, I think, something. Hold on. David said something. Oh, no, he didn't. I thought. So, yeah, so. Now, wait a minute. The Secretary of State, what were you just saying? Because I had a thought.
Regarding who it is that's in charge would be the fiduciary, which would be the secretary who holds the secrets.
Oh, yes.
And
I have a video on that.
The secretaries, and the definition for the job for Secretary of State means that they are the one that holds all certificates and titles. Yes,
and they're the ones that have to authenticate too, don't they?
Correct. They're the one that do the authentications.
So secret, what you just said, secret. I found a film from Ghana from 2011 when they were missing all the emails and the security information from Hillary. And so in the relevant time period, and I did forward this, and they've looked at it quite a bit. In Ghana, they had they had government computers, and the guy was showing it, and he was talking about the identity theft. And it had secret, and guess what I found interesting? That the government, our government, had marked off SE, and it was called CRET, C-R-E-T. So you might want to do a search on that.
Wow. And
do a search on this, xdd.org, xdd2.org, xdd3.org. And you can go in there and you can look up your phone number, and it'll tie you to your 2 brand new fictitious names and addresses with credit cards and Social Security numbers. That is ran by the Koch brothers, but I like to call them the Koch brothers. So.
Now, you said first was xdd.org, and what were the other 2?
It's xdd.org, xdd2.org, xdd3.org. And when you get in there, go down to frequently asked questions and go ahead and get over where Mozilla and Firefox and all of them are doing an open sourceware over in, I think it's Germany, it might be the Netherlands, and they're all in there, and they've got pictures where they're having parties with, I don't know, some of them are dressed like owls, and some of them have Barbie doll heads, and it's some real rock type stuff. Oh, yeah, and it's happening now. And so they just said, we're not doing any harm. We're actually protecting you. So I've got this. Well, now listen, the prison system's tied to it because I kept getting calls, and I'm pretty sure I've talked to. When I first found out about this, I talked to all the agencies, and I sent them stuff that was valid, and they were like, "Oh," and Neil Freeman, the FBI, is like, "What you got is fraud. I can't deny it, but my boss won't let me touch it." And I thought he was talking about his supervisor. Well, then the sheriff later, who I talked to, he said, "Carol, I talked to him about something that was going on with this judge. I wanted to see about getting him arrested because I wanted him arrested." Sheriff's going, "Wait a minute, I got to call the FBI." He calls me back and he goes, I don't know if there's an investigation going on or not, but, I would just keep sending stuff to them. He said, and then later on we're talking, he goes, "Oh, I can't interfere with the investigation." I said, "I thought you didn't know if there was an investigation going on." and this is what he said. He goes, "Well, I will tell you that Neil told me that his boss or supervisor was the Attorney General." He found that interesting, and so did I. And that tells me that the Fusion Center has taken over, and we are now country nation states, federated entity with 50 countries in it, or 49. I don't know about Hawaii and Puerto Rico. I think, is that it? That may not be in yet.
Even Hawaii and Alaska, I've heard, have somehow seceded.
Well, I don't know if they have, because I've spoken with the Hawaiians out there, some of those people, years ago with Renee, and they don't seem to agree with that they have. Now, Alaska, that's where they run all the property through the boroughs, and they have a legislation in place that allows that. So these extra assignments, these tranches that we were all talking about, they run up through the boroughs of Alaska, and that's where we got our name, Two Moms on a Borough.
Oh, well,
when you look that up, it's going to be eye-opening. If you do that search, go ahead and have fun, because it's not good. I thought, what were we thinking when we made up this name?
Oh, Two Moms on a Borough? Oh,
yeah.
Okay, yeah.
If you do a Google search, you would be surprised.
Yeah. I'll look up that stuff that you shared, and I'll share that in the Tactical Sovereignty, and as well, any interesting things that you stumble across, feel free to throw into there as well.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Sure will, and I will get this stuff to you tonight or by in the morning.
Sounds good.
Carol, can I take...
Yeah.
I just did xdd2.org, and I put in my first name and middle in the search. And it says, sorry, but that search was not found. But then it says searches should be used in the following format. And it gives all kinds of different addresses. And then it says, gives us six, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 addresses. Then it says last, first, middle, last face.
Why don't you just go up to the phone number part? There's a phone number search up there. And click.
Yeah, the phone numbers. Yeah, different phone numbers.
Click on it. It's a process of descending, and that. So you'll start out with ones, twos, rows of 1, 2, 3s. You just go down until you finally hit your phone number. So, like, you could put in my 765-962-4713, my old one, and this guy named Robert McNutt's going to come up. Remember when I used to say, they keep calling me, and they'll say, is Mrs. McNutt, is Robert there? And I'm like, he does not live here. He never has. I've been here since the early 90s. And this guy's in prison for stolen car parts. I think he's fictitious, and it's a prison system. And my cable guy who came in to change my modem for no reason, he just stopped by to change it. He said, sometimes these things take time. And I said, so can you tell me what's going on with phone calls? And he goes, what's happened? And I said, we keep getting a call for Robert McNutt, but he lives about a block over. He goes, I bet they're jumping it off the piggyback, the transformer out behind his house, because that's where it's at.
I just put my phone number. It came up the same old addresses that were before.
I don't know, Gloria. I'm going to have to help you or do it. I cannot help you. You got to figure it out. It's kind of hard to figure out. Put in another phone. Just click on a number there and keep on clicking until you get to the addresses. Then click on the name, and then you're going to see the complete dossier of this, including passport numbers, and they're all fictitious. Why would they be building this database? And it's in beta version. And guess what else? The Federal Elections Commission has a beta version they were using during this election. And you would think that it would be only one Federal Election Commission. They have had two, and I have it on recording, because I record stuff. If I can't type, I record it to memorialize the evidence, because they're changing everything. I cheer everybody up. I'm so happy to have spread my Mrs. Gloom cheer.
Oh, no. I think it's been very enlightening for everybody, I hope.
This is unbelievable. This is actually a list of 250 million people indexed by the wrong address, name, phone number, and SS numbers. This data is fictitious. Any resemblance in an actual person living or dead is purely coincidental. Yeah, my butt.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
There's your plausible deniability. That's
Well,
your
I
plausible
think that
deniability.
Renee might have found that whenever she was doing, we were looking at glass together. I showed her three of us were working together, and she put her name in there. Of course, everything comes up backwards because that was made in 2002 for China to have access to the internet. So it's almost like digging through, and everything's upside and backwards. So in the search, when she put in something, that XDD came up. And I tell you, I've had such fun with that thing. It's like a big Sudoku puzzle, this thing is. If you can make it that way. I mean, it's better than, I deal with a lot of emotional people. They're like, you don't understand. I don't think that they understand that my grandson was put in jail for 10 months and he was continually assaulted, him and 3 other people. One guy hung himself, a real nice-looking young black man hung himself. And that was all covered up. But these kind of things that they're doing, they're actually enjoying this. So you can't be weak at heart. You can't, and you got to have fun with it because they hate it. They hate it when you go in there and you're okay. They're like, she's not emotional. She's giving me dirty looks. She's called the judge. She just called me sweetie. Gloria, you can relate, can't you?
Yeah, like in bankruptcy court when I called the judge sweetie. I went to real quick. I went to court.
Joining conference now. This conference is being recorded by the organizer.
Don't you dare ever call me sweetie again, because if you do, I'm going to call the bailiff on you. I said, Your Honor, I'm sorry. I'm a little nervous. I'm new at doing this stuff. I promise I won't. I always tell people my sweetie and stuff. Then, bottom line, I walked out with my attorney, the schmuck, okay? And he tells me, Gloria, by the way, the judge is gay. I went, oh, no wonder he almost put me in jail.
I wish that I had somebody to do my bail. I had it ahead of time, and I would like to wear a tan jumpsuit and I'm talking about the leggings and everything, tan, with a blue blazer to wear. If somebody was far away, they'd be like, is she naked? And I want to go in as the bare naked owner. And I want to say at the end, and fuck you very much, and you're a very impotent man, Your Honor. I have contempt because they are contemptuous. I have contempt for them, but I worked around enough, and it was horrible when I fought Colgate. They tried to do the nuts and sluts defense in doctor shop, and all their doctors said there's nothing wrong with her. She brought all her evidence. And as a matter of fact, she seems to be of indeed superior intellect when it comes to solving complex problems, because they try to make everything harder than what it is. And it's real simple. It is the flip side of everything.
That's what I've learned. Everything we look at, if we don't understand it, think about the opposite of it. That's what it is.
Well, think about the lens we're looking through. We got a lens, we're thinking it into existence, for real.
Yes. Yep. Even the way our eyes work, and you see the green lawn out there. Well, your eyes don't see a green lawn. Your eyes see everything but green. That's why it comes back as green.
Sometimes,
you know what
go ahead.
Go ahead. Sure. No, go ahead.
Well, sometimes there's some books and some writings and some politicians that are dropping some pretty heavy stuff, and they said that if we saw the dead bodies that were in the ocean, we would be appalled, but they kind of had it covered up.
Yep.
So people, I think that, I don't know what they're called. They call them, somebody's like, you're an empath. I said, what is that? But I'm real super sensitive to the gravity being off, or the vibration, if you will. Because I'm kind of like this. I tell you, that time thing, that it can exist and not exist. But even if it doesn't exist, and you got an alter world out here where it does, and Congress is a place where it doesn't exist at all. It is not a barrier or a constraint. And the guy testified to this in '87 with Clinton, and I think it was Mondale, and the other guy testified that the school system they were putting in, he goes, I'm just going to tell you the ugly truth. It's a socialist system. And I'm thinking, this video got 22 views in all this time. Are you kidding me?
Well, it may have gotten a lot.
C-SPAN.
Yeah, it may have gotten a lot more, but they just cut the numbers down. Like it looked like nobody was paying attention to it.
I don't know, but C-SPAN has the, I think C-SPAN is, he's from here, Indiana, and I think this is the cross-through country because everybody's name gets buried here because we got the zero that's 3.2 versus everybody else because when the guy gave it to the state of Indiana, the lower house voted unanimously to change the law to make pi 3.2. But the rest of the states had to pay for it. But Indiana was gifted it, and it still sits on the books, but they didn't take it to the higher. So it's almost like a gap between the Old Testament and the New Testament in their system. It's very important. And it's that zero. It is the beginning and the end.
Yep, absolutely. Well, people don't realize the power of not just pi, but the Fibonacci sequence as well, because it's everywhere.
Yeah, and that's in the code. That's in the code, that Fibonacci.
But the only place you won't see it at is taught in colleges or schools.
Well, somebody will hoover over some of their hyperlinks, you're going to see that a lot of those are written with the Fibonacci, and they're also written with the square roots, but that aren't taken down to a square root. They end up being a square root, and when you take them down, and then they also have, like in DocsPop, when you're looking at a foreclosure, it'll have that Fibonacci sequence, and the zeros are irrelevant. You roll them off because they're the rolling stone. They're the placeholder. We are the zeros. You can roll those off in this system, and they take them completely out the courthouse. So if I'm out here in La La Land, in the World Wide Web, I'm going to put in all the zeros it says, or I'm not going to get the case. But when I go in there, the zeros have disappeared. They have zeroed out. They have purged out. They modified at the Great Purge for the Muslim community. Then they completely purged. They are now doing what are called remodification cases all over the United States. And I just saw that in a string where I got into the Boker blog for the court, and it's actually, since the internet has went worldwide, I was able to find it through a more than, less than arrow. I put in words in the middle of it, and I was able to find it, and I actually copied it. So it's Unicode kind. It's got a lot of, but it tells what they're saying in there. It tells the cases, and the cases won't show up. It says that they're not available, but their notes I have. And that's all anybody has. You can inspect the element. Well, you right-click on it, like Brian, right-click. You go to anything you want, you right-click on it, and it says Inspect View Page Element. And then you can inspect too, and it'll come up a bunch of stuff, and then you just copy and paste it into Word to memorialize it. Oh, yeah, there it goes. And you'll find things in there, hidden there. It's like a big inventory sheet to me.
Mm-hmm.
And these kids who do it are real smart.
Yeah. Well, Carol, we've just broke through the 3-hour marker. And,
all right, I'll let you go. Merry Christmas, everybody, and Happy New Year, and Happy Holidays. I'm saying Merry Christmas for the people that do that. I don't do Christmas.
No, same here.
I celebrate his birthday more along the fall time, but I do not. I used to, but I haven't done it for many, many years. It's too commercial. It's a Miracle on 34th Street.
Well, birthdays are a happy birthday. They aren't merry birthday, are they?
Right. And I do try to think, well, I need to do this more, I need to do that more, because I do see, and I got to be real careful because I go down in these rabbit holes, and I get very depressed, so I have to come up out of them sometime, and I do have to use my humor because it's that bad, and it's that bad for these, just like these women that were just on here. That's just, all of their stories are very, and it's like that all over, huh, Brian?
Yeah, it is. It's the same everywhere. A lot of people want to say, "Oh, this county is the worst." You wouldn't believe it. Well, it is the same nationwide.
Is horrible.
And I feel very sorry for a lot of these women that have sons and daughters stuck into the prison system. It's
the men too. They just don't know it yet, and that's the sad thing. Obama and Joe Biden said that they were going to stand up because there had been women that had been raped and violated, and they were going to do it to settle the books, and nobody heard them. And they said, we're going to settle the books. And they're just like looking at each other like, oh, we got by with it. Nobody was listening again.
Yep.
Anyway,
absolutely.
Thank you so much for having me. I had fun, and I will. I hope David gets back on the next time because he can help a lot of people. He knows the law. I just know the fraud. And
right.
I think I might know some answers because I really do. I don't know why this fraud upon the court is going to work and this Securities Exchange Commission 10B. And then there's some other ones too. I found a lot of good cases like United States versus Vampire Nation.
Yeah, I've found a lot of stuff under that word vampire.
Well, this is a real case, and it appears that it's a fake case. So anytime you see Jane and John Doe's in the record too, who represents all the Jane and John Doe's? It's Miracle on 34th Street, and that's the trustees of St. Nicholas. Got to be in the courthouse because that's where the mail went to. And the Jane and John Doe's, probably whenever Boris was doing that stuff a while back, I had a thought, but, I'd hate to be held responsible for all the Jane and John Doe's bodily attached, I mean. But I thought, get your birth certificate authenticated, do what you got to do, and go in and say, I'm claiming all the Jane and John Doe's. They would be pissed if somebody took those over. And you'd have enough for your own nation if you took them over. Now, think about that one.
Well, when him and I went up to the Capitol building, we signed on under John Doe and Company.
Yeah. Or like the Wizard of Oz. I'm the Queen of Oz. But the Does, there's all kinds of them. So I think that somebody should go in and claim all those, and they would take it away if they could do it right. They had everything right. This is just a thought because you probably got advanced people, all of them listening. Go in there and get those Jane and John Does because those lawyers claim them. They play act them all the time. If they were claimed, and you didn't have to actually, you knew they were Jane and just claim them all, and there wasn't actually a person or a paid prisoner that traveled around playing them, you could claim them all, and you would take away their power or at least level the playing field.
Yep.
I think. All right. Talk to you later, guys.
All right, dear. We'll talk to you later. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Carol. All right, guys. Gatekeeper, Justice DW, you around?
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry about that. Got a lot of stuff going on at the house.
Nope, no problem. All right, we're just going to be signing out here, guys. And like I've said before, I just want everybody to truly know where you're from, who you are. Those are the things that have been hidden from you. Those are the things you need to learn. And with that, we'll be taking off. It's 3 hours and 15 minutes in. Good night, guys.
Good night.